Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it's not morning, is it? Oh my God, I'm so used to saying that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. I've been recording all my morning videos at night, and so, anyways, before I start bringing guests on, I just wanted to explain a couple of things. I've been working on a story about Atlantis for a while. It's actually more of a role playing game idea, and I know people have done it before, but I thought I had something different. So, like any good writer, I went to the original source. Uh, and in my opinion, other than one set of fragments that I could not track down, this is, and even those fragments, what I did find, uh, don't. Anyways, I went to the original source, that being Plato and his books or writings, the Timaeus and the Critias. And while the Timaeus does mention Atlantis in one sentence, and then it toddles off and talking about some other really weird stuff, um, I went on into the Critias and read it and did a little more research elsewhere on the interwebs and came up with my own thoughts and opinions. And uh, what they are we'll get to. But my good friend Omen has been waiting patiently for a while now. Watch, I'll go bring him in, and he won't be in front of his camera.
I'm here.
Okay, so tonight my guest is what is that? 4 chicken Kievs.
Yeah, yep. No, I mean, but yes, we don't we want people to listen to us. They have a face for radio. Yeah,
And a voice for print.
that's right.
I thought that was Bo's line, but okay, you can steal it. He's not here. I'm sure he's.
Well, someone said that, and we've all picked it up over time. So
Yes, no, but that's how he starts all his videos these days. His best video, not his best video, but his best opening was where he stole everybody's intro from me and Venture Satanis and then that line. So how you doing, man? How's your vacation?
well, it's fine. I've been doing training, and that just tells me I need to move more. But
Dude, tell me about it. You heard about me and the firewood, right?
no, I only heard about Cal and the firewood.
No, I had apparently what's called a true cord, not a modern day cord of wood. You know, a modern cord of wood is 8 feet by 4 feet by 16 or 18 inches. I
Yes,
got an entire driveway dumped with a forest of
yeah, it's like
firewood.
128 cubic feet or something like that.
It was huge. It was this giant truck, and I'm like, how's he gonna get my section out of the truck? And then he just dumped it. I'm like, oh no, because he dumped it right in front of the driveway, and the wife was due home in 2 hours. So I had to move it all, and the firewood would not fit on my standard hand truck dolly, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah,
They kept falling through the bars because it was, they weren't long enough. Some of them were, you know.
sure.
So I'm hauling ass, moving all this wood, sweating, bullets, because I knew if it was there when my wife got home, she'd lose her mind because she had to park out on the sidewalk or . The drive,
It's too far of a walk.
right? It's like no matter how you look at it, it's 20 feet. But so I'm hustling and just busting my ass, stacking it, and running out of room and trying to come up with. I ended up filling 3 trash cans in part of the garage and all along both 2 sides of my house, with just about 5 foot high stacks of wood, one row deep,
Yes.
with from to keep it from touching the wall and everything, so I could make lots of spider homes. Funny thing, my wife believes that clutter and firewood create spiders, not attract them, but create them out of thin air. It's kind of a
Oh, you mean right up there with the if you put your dirty underwear in your shoe, it will magically generate mice?
I've never heard that one.
Apparently, that was a belief in the Middle Ages.
Okay, well, humanity is really not changed all that much, has it? Speaking of humanity not changing, did you ever get a chance to read the Timaeus?
So I read all of it, and
Okay.
I read Ignatius Donnelly. It is basically like I said, Ignatius Donnelly basically took everything out of that, from Plato, and he just copied all the lines that were important about Atlantis. I will mention one thing. So, you were kind of surprised in what was said and what was not.
Mm-hmm.
How familiar are you with Mu?
A little.
Because I remember reading that actually before I ever read anything about Atlantis for the most part.
Oh, that's
Because they
weird.
put it,
You would think it'd be the
well,
other way around.
it was fourth grade. Someone had some really old tattered books,
Oh, okay. That's you're
and they had
probably
them in the
you're
classroom, and I read them all three of them.
okay.
And I think a lot of what people attribute to Atlantis was actually from of Mu, which were in the 1930s. Now I know Ignatius Donnelly was credited with giving the whole thing with because his book came out in 1882, and he was one of the ones that was part of the reason that he literally became a congressman, was to learn more about Atlantis. And so he was trying to find all of the source materials. And then, like I said, I haven't got through his book for the most part. I've got through about 100 out of 400 pages. And he was going through the flood myths, and then he starts going through. I haven't got to the civilization, which is the last 2/3. So I mean, that's maybe something we want to discuss later on. But those
I don't know how much time you have, but I'm okay if we only go an hour. If you want to go a little more, but let's not ruin it and save room for another episode, because I am trying to milk an entire month out of Atlantis, and it's actually harder than it sounds without buying into all of the later modern ideas. I literally now think Edgar Casey was an absolute lying or manipulated piece of garbage. None of that stuff that he said was ever mentioned prior, except maybe in the Thule Society and Madame Blavatsky and all the stuff that they made up out of whole cloth. No crystal technology, no technology whatsoever, really, from Plato's account. They barely had the wheel, you know.
So, and this is why I said we might want to look up at Mu, and I know we're talking about Atlantis.
No, that's absolutely fine, because like I said at the beginning of the show, I've always been fascinated by the stories that I heard that I now believe were fiction. It always sounded like such a great story, such a great all kinds of stuff you could do with it. Whether it be science fiction or fantasy or even contemporary work, which mine was actually a contemporary idea or setting. There's so much that had it been true, or had it been even close to true, would make for a freaking fantastic story. I was never a big fan of Stargate Atlantis, but I love the architecture and the feel of those things, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this would be so cool. You could do all kinds of stuff. And of course, I watched a crap ton of Ancient Aliens, which I now want to slap Giorgio Salukis because Atlantis never took off. It was not a spaceship. Shut the hell up. I don't know what you're smoking, but damn, I hope you're not paying too much for it, because it's making you crazy.
So, yeah, Ignatius Donnelly was the one that popularized Atlantis, and then that was taken over from a lot of others, and they expanded it. But then James Churchward apparently did Mu, and Mu was the one where a lot of people were, and he did it. It's like, oh, I found all of this, and he, his 3 books, and I'm looking at it right now. Of course, trust Wikipedia what you can, and my 40-plus-year-old memory of what I read.
So where was Mu supposedly located? Same place?
Pacific. No.
Oh, okay.
So Mu was the Pacific, Atlantis was the Atlantic, and then if we really want to get to a third one, Lemuria was the one in the Indian Ocean.
And I'm not discounting any of those as possibilities. We find ancient things that don't quite line up with what we've been taught in school in the last 100 years or so, because those dead people might get offended if we ruin their theories, etc.
Well, actually, as my friends who are archaeologists say, archaeology advances one death at a time, which refers to all the old guard that disappear.
That's terrifyingly true. George, you're going to join us. I gave you the link. If not, no problem, because I know we're doing a show tomorrow together. But your dad sounds like he was quite the character, like my own parents were. Well, they were cards, and they had to be dealt with. Um,
So, and you have to realize that I was listening to Randall Carlson going through a lot of the stuff about Atlantis, about where it could. And if anyone's familiar with the reach out structure, it sounds similar to what's being described by Plato. Now, I don't think it's perfect or anything else like that. It just,
is that the one in the Sahara?
yes, it's yes. Um,
Well, I mean, if you think about it, the design isn't all that. Um, I mean, maybe it was unique, but it sounds strategically sound. However, I
it's,
find. Go ahead.
oh no, the scale's completely off of what's being described by Plato.
Right, it
But,
was really small.
well,
I mean, like
Stadia
230
is,
miles, and
I think
it
Stadia,
wasn't.
when you start mentioning it, and I'll have to remember correctly, we'll have to go look up what the distances Stadia are. But you're right.
Right.
It's nowhere near the size that people were describing it as. It's nowhere, nothing in there that I saw was super fantastical, like everyone was describing.
No, no. I mean, I found it amusing that when he was describing it and describing the army, that's what really got me because um, he's describing the army of spearmen
Mm-hmm.
and slingers, as in people who throw rocks,
Yeah.
and chariots. Well,
Hey,
that's not
don't
all that
knock slingers, man.
advanced, considering
Slingers are deadly.
Oh, I know. They're. I'm not discounting that, but compared to slinging rocks and us now slinging rockets, there's a huge, massive technological difference between the
Well,
two. And the other amusing thing that I thought, mind you, this was, Atlantis was 9,000 years before Plato, and yet they were still using triremes back then, and in Plato's time, and that the channels were just barely big enough for a trireme or trireme or however it was pronounced.
yeah.
The standard ship of the day could barely fit through the channels, and I'm like, well, that must have made things slow for all those billions of highly advanced people chugging along in their rowboats. Right? There's
I
no what people mistake, I think,
yeah.
for advanced society was their advanced uh, set of morals that they started out with, thanks to their divine lineage of the bloodline of Atlas, and his children, being the equivalent of demigods, and then his children had children with mortals, makes them quarter gods, and as the bloodline thinned, so did their morals, becoming more avaristic and obviously, he didn't say degenerate, but I mean, what's degenerate to an ancient, Greek? No offense, but compared to what
Well,
we, what I mean, we they did things that we think were, crazy, but if they saw what we did, they'd be like, oh dear God.
well, I'm
Um,
going to bring this up. One is Plato mentions Solon, which was about 6 generations removed from him.
mhm.
And so, you know what? I think what it really comes down to, when we talk about Atlantis, is there was an ancient civilization that predated the dynastic Egyptians.
Mhm.
And I think that, and we're finding evidence that there was. I
Well,
think that's really
absolutely,
important.
absolutely. Um, all of the Gobekli Tepe, and what's the other Tepe?
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
Karen
about. Yeah.
Tepe, Karen Tepe. Those things are fascinating and apparently ancient, and intentionally, supposedly intentionally buried. I could believe that they were just hit with a mud flood or something, that just got them in one day. But it's the fact that they didn't find any skeletons there, but they found all kinds of other stuff, just intentionally. Just, well, we're going to make a time capsule of the weirdest sort. Um,
So
okay.
I mean, looking at it, and this is why I wish I read more of Donnelly, and I really need to, was a part of his point was that the civilizations in the Americas, in Africa, Asia, and Europe were much more tightly connected to each other
Mhm.
than,
Oh,
and,
absolutely.
and he says that there was communication. So his hypothesis is that, well, that's because there was a civilization in the Atlantic, about which is about where the Azores are right now.
Mhm.
About 3 days west of what they call the Pillars of Hercules, or at his
You know
point.
what? Did you
Well,
notice I noticed something that was really striking about that description of the Pillars of Hercules. Everybody says beyond, right?
mhm.
Beyond the Pillars of Hercules, but Plato actually said in front of,
Mm.
and to me that sounds like it was actually pretty damn close if you think about
Did it say in front of, or I'll have to look.
it. Yeah, it literally said in front of, and I'm like, that's an odd turn of phrase when you could have just said beyond, which we all say, but the translated, mind you, my copy is literally has on one page the Greek version and then the translated version, and I don't
Oh yeah,
speak
yeah,
Greek.
you're right. The power came forth out of the Atlantic, for in those days the Atlantic was navigable, and there was an island situated in front of the straits, which you could call the Columns of Heracles. The
Isn't
island
that a
was
weird
larger
way
than
to write it?
Libya. What's that?
Isn't that a weird way to write it?
Um, well, we have to go by the whoever translated it, because
Right.
translation. And I'm
Mine was
going
actually Cambridge University, I believe,
and I'm going
translated
by
by
what
R.G. Burry.
and I'm going by what Donnelly did. So there's much more flowery, and a lot of times they tried, as a one translation. So the island was larger than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way through to other islands, and from the islands that you might pass through the whole of the opposite continent, which surrounded the true ocean. For this sea is which within the Straits of Hercules is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance, and of course we're going through that.
Yeah,
Um,
and the dimensions uh, being bigger than such and such wouldn't fit in there, would it?
no, but I think that they was talking about this capital city when they was talking about the um,
Maybe, but if you go by his dimensions, then it was definitely not. They contradict each other.
that's what I said. Is I think that's why I'm referring to the fact that I believe that the he's referring to the city, um, going through that. Um,
Maybe. Um,
and, and and we're not going through it like line by line, because everyone would hate
no,
it.
we don't have time for that. And it was already hard enough to read because I actually read the Timaeus first, and I almost started drinking. It was just like, how do you? Oh dear God, it was awful.
Well, that's why I said is Donnelly had his stuff and it was only 20 pages. And it's like Timaeus and some of these others have these long discussions outside of the thing about Atlantis.
Yeah. It was, and what people need to realize is that the entirety of the bringing up of Atlantis was to show how great Athens was, which brings me to another military tactical point. Tiny little
Mhm.
place called Athens defeated this place bigger than Africa um, because of their superior morals.
Well, and that's common wherever you go. And I think this comes down to, when you talk about the flood myth, which is again things that Donnelly talks about. Because
And Plato did as well. There being like many world shaking floods prior to Athens, his time, that it, drowned the world like 9 separate times. I'm like, okay, so the planet's way older and civilization goes back way far. But
well, and no, what I mean is because Donnelly goes through a lot of the flood myths. So he goes to the Bible, he goes to Enkidu, he takes some Hindu myths, and I didn't get through all of them. We talked about Native American myths, and I think some of the important part is they say 9,000 years before. So when you look at Plato is that you're looking at, that's
there was in fact a major flood.
there was, and it's the end of the Younger
Or
Dryas, if I remember correctly. It's like
or
11,600 or 12,000.
evidence suggests that there was one. I don't have a time machine. I didn't see it, so I don't count that as evidence. But there is compelling evidence to suggest that there was. George says, my knowledge of Atlantis comes from the 1961 film Atlantis, The Lost Continent. Had a death ray and Get Smart's boss in it. Well, I can assure you Atlantis never had a death ray. If they did, why were they using rocks and not bows and arrows or guns, but rocks as their main form of projectile weapon? Um, that's
And
just retarded.
And that's where I think Moo was coming into it. So they did Moo, but then
Maybe that maybe there are or were, I should say, advanced societies a long time ago that had radios and teleporters and spaceships and all that crap. To date, we have found not one single shred of evidence of anything like that. Just like we've never found a little home for a leprechaun or any tiny little furniture. It makes for great fiction and great ideas, but until we start digging this stuff up, then it might as well not have ever been a thing,
and
but
that's
we're
why I'm
not
getting
getting
into
out of it.
that's why I'm getting into Moo, which was because that was done in 1954 and apparently reprinted in 1970 and lost confidence by who's our favorite non-Conan author? I'm sorry, not Howard Conan author.
Lynn Carter
The other
or
one,
L. Sprague de Camp.
DeCamp.
Okay.
So DeCamp
Well,
wrote a book about Moo.
okay.
Um,
Again, I need to see
so,
some unearthed archaeological evidence of death rays and crystals and all that stuff. Because that's the part that bugs me the most, is attributing these things without a single shred of evidence. I mean, I can make up that kind of crap too about Pluto and Jupiter. Nobody can
mhm.
prove me wrong. Give it 1,000 years, and suddenly people are going to be scrambling to get to Jupiter and Pluto to go, on archaeological digs and find out, oh, you can't survive there. Or not yet.
But
Maybe someday.
but but then we have the other part, which is, and this is why I enjoy reading some of the others. Well, this is what Ignatius Donnelly does when they talk about things hitting the ground and um, giant winds and things like this. But that to me could very well represent a meteor hitting the Earth at those times. And we do know that when we talk about ancient civilization, we do know that these things were occurring. And
Mhm.
apparently, I don't know what it is about geologists and let me phrase that. How do I want to put this? Because my friends are archaeologists, but they're not academic archaeologists, so they can say what they think. Whereas
Mm,
when you're in
that
academia,
must be nice.
well, the problem is when you're in academia, you're not allowed to say what you think because then they'll isolate you and then make sure you don't get any funding, and that's a death sentence for a professor. Um,
That's so immature. Well, I'm just going to put it that way, uh, instead of what I'm really thinking.
mm,
Uh, there's no justification for that, unless you want to go to the other woo woo conspiracies that the government's hiding all this stuff from us. Really, really, they can't hide their evidence today
mm.
on the shenanigans. You know what I'm saying? With
I,
all the
I
burn bags. I mean, they're incompetent bozos who can't find a ham sandwich in a
it,
timely manner, let alone.
I'm going to say from a personal experience, this, and I hate saying this because this happens throughout. One is people act like, oh, we can't lose that technology. No, we lose it every time there's a new generation that comes in and the old generation retires and they have to relearn it. I saw that in my field.
Mhm,
And then the
mhm.
other part is, as much as we like talking about this, like, oh, the government's hiding this. Any modern government loves paperwork. They just love paperwork to death, especially the Germans. I mean, now Rwanda, they didn't care, but that was not a functioning democracy. But I mean, like whenever they talk about, oh, there's this massive, cover up of all these people that died, the government loves to do paperwork. I mean, my
Which leaves a
grandfather,
paper trail, which leaves evidence, or at least
and, I,
information to be investigated.
and I'm not saying that there aren't things that the government isn't hiding. Of course, the government's
Oh,
hiding tons of stuff. They're just not very
oh
good
no.
at it. It's
Yeah,
just,
the Tuskegee experiments. Anybody? Yeah.
oh, and the Tuskegee experiments are the very minor things. Those were a lot of that stuff was
Well, not to
public.
the people involved, but I know what you mean.
I mean, but I think that's one is I do think that there is and I'm going to use this in a human aspect, a racial memory among all humans that there were giant catastrophic events that may have come from the stars. It's one of the reasons that we love astronomy. It's one of the reasons that comets are always viewed as bad omens.
Well, I was making this
Yeah.
comment the other day. I once upon a time I was up in Irvine Meadows for not a concert but a haunted house.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about it, because of Halloween, and up there for whatever reason, I could see so many stars. It was like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And then I
Oh, I
moved to
know.
Florida, where the altitude is much higher than it was there, or at least I believe it was. I can't see shit at night. I see like a handful of stars, the same old, half a dozen stars or maybe 20,
Right.
until it gets a little bit later and more of the lights have gone out and the light pollution is dimmed to some extent. But it's still nothing like what I imagine a lot of people out in, more remote areas can see. And our ancient ancestors must have been able to look up every night seeing just this freaking stunning light show. And occasionally they moved,
Well, so
and did things. I would pay some attention to that.
I
It
mean,
just,
I was talking to Dave Matheson, who's written several books on what he calls the story of the. I'll have to find the exact title, but basically, his point is most of the mythology is even Christian mythology. A lot of it is allegories for stars, and those are some of his arguments because he says, "Well, this is a weird thing." And he's talking, and he uses art, like there are certain positions in artwork that matches certain constellations, especially whenever you see your heroes, where you see a club over their head and they're in this, and it always looks like they're in a weird position with their legs. And when you look up at the stars, you'll see that. And so he was out there with my son and then the tour group, and he had this super, super bright laser pointer. And he was just drawing up the constellations. And people forget just how much of the sky a constellation takes up. It's but and the same thing. But if you always go look at all this stuff, it almost always shows it's like comets, bad portents, bad ill omens. And if you, and this one again, this is why I'm quoting some of Randall Carlson, who I was out there, because he's arguing that there is evidence that there were meteor strikes on the ice sheets, which to me makes perfect sense of what's going on there. And his argument is that these meteorites probably came from the tail of a comet or something of that sort.
okay.
And it fits right about the same time that we're talking about, the Younger Dryas and the massive floods. And then you start listening to different floods and where they are. And every culture has these floods. And now, of course, if you want to listen to Randall Carlson for about 25 hours, he talks about how the Azores may be part of that. I know that they're having a tour out there. As to whether you believe it or not, from our standpoint, as role-playing gamers, we love this stuff. We eat it up.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether it's true or not isn't the point. The point is that it inspires us and gets our imagination. But you're right. When they talk about things like this, in no part do they ever talk about, and this is one thing I don't like, because when I say an advanced civilization, in my view, it doesn't mean that they're more advanced than us. It means that they're more advanced than what our current archaeological, paleontologic, belief is for the society. So,
in Plato's case specifically, it was morally advanced, and by morally advanced, it meant not so concerned with possessions and monetary gain and things like that. It was all about their morals. However, some of their morals and philosophies, like the state raising children and taking them away from parents to raise them, I found despicable and intolerable. But that's the way Plato and some of his contemporaries thought the ideal state would be, and that the perfect allegorical fictional society would do all the things that they wanted to implement. But of course, it had to be so far back removed that let's bring it back, and make it part of the current state of affairs in Athens. And they had to make up a fictional place to try to mimic, because had they done the research or seen it enacted in real life, they'd find out what an absolute
Well,
nightmare they'd be creating.
let's be honest about this. Plato never did anything useful, other than
And it's funny too, because when I was looking at Plato's works, everything he ever did was an allegory or an analogy. What was the other word? Oh God, I tried to remember that word.
sorry,
Hold on.
sorry, I lost for a second. My son tried calling. I'll get that. I'll call him back in like half an hour. But
Analogy. All he wrote were allegories and analogies
well,
for the most part,
he was a
which
philosopher.
means
He had this
right, which
idea
means he
that
wasn't
the
writing
highest
history.
person should be a philosopher king. That comes from him, and
Yeah, well, that's the last thing any good society needs. I'm sorry.
and the problem that I have for all of this is that, and is that if you don't have a feedback loop, then you don't know what works or what doesn't. Which we can talk about all the evils and ills of the world, but
Mhm.
I hate saying this is I can tell someone theoretically, well, you can just pull that pizza out with your bare hands and it should be just fine. Anyone that's tried pulling pizza out with their bare hand knows that they get burned very quickly.
Yeah, it might look good on paper, but
Yes.
in practice, it's not the case. George says Atlantis inspired a setting I made for a family traveler game.
Oh, absolutely.
It makes for great fiction. It
Hey, hey,
absolutely does, and maybe Mu or Lemuria was what everybody wishes Atlantis was, but we can safely, I think, at least I can,
yeah,
uh, scratch that off the
yeah.
list of societies that might have been, created by aliens, extraterrestrials, gods, advanced humans. All that. Atlantis wasn't that.
And when
Atlantis was a society a little more,
it was
if
advanced
any,
for its time.
and
That's what
even
it was.
then, not really, because after 9,000 years of human civilization, they still couldn't get the combustion engine or the hang glider.
Well, no. What I'm referring to is, like we talked about with Gobeleki Tepe and a few of these others, it dates it, its technology level was more advanced than what we're taught in school, and that's what I view as an advanced civilization.
Mhm.
It's like, look, this is advanced.
And to be fair, a lot of the stone cutting and architectural designs are things that we still don't know how to do today. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't born by necessity,
Yeah.
as opposed to that they were superior to us. No, they just didn't have the tools we have, and since we have the tools we have, we found ways to do things cheap and fast. They
Well,
didn't
I'm going
care
to
about cheap or fast. They just wanted it done, and they just figured out a way to do it with the minimal tools they had. Those being, chisels and massive whips.
Well, I'm going to bring this up, which is it's not that we can't do things with our own technology. It's just that we don't view that as worth it. And the other
No, we
part is,
can't lift the stone at Ballback. We
I
can't
you know
even
what,
make that.
people say that. I think we could. The question is it's not
Who's
since
going
we
to pay for it?
yeah, exactly. Why would we pay for this? What is it worth the money?
Well, I
Um,
mean, we could go out in the middle of the Arizona desert somewhere and try and recreate it, but
it,
again, who's going to pay for it?
well, exactly. And then the other part is there's very different because we are in somewhat a democracy of all the crap that we are spending now, and we're going to. The first we would do is we would yell and scream that someone's wasting money on trying to move a stupid block. And to be
Fair,
fair,
fair.
that's great if someone like Elon Musk, that's your own money or whatever, you can do that.
Yeah,
I
you're not
think,
going to get any volunteers, and you're not going to be able to get anybody to start doing the manual labor for less than $50 an hour. That's going to rack up a lot of money, and yeah,
but I think that there's some of those things, and I do think that there's something we can learn from our ancestors in the fact that they may have had better ideas. I've heard people say that technology is lost in two generations, and people act like no, it isn't. If you don't believe me, just find out what was happening in Ukraine that they could not build Stinger missiles and they had to bring guys out of retirement.
mhm.
We're talking 70-year-old engineers. I'm like, how in the world can we not make this? in modern day. And it's like, well, and this is the other part too, is any technology is not isolated to itself. We could have done combustion engines, but combustion engines are only useful if you have the other metallurgies and
Mhm.
everything else in the systems behind it to support it. It's the same thing if I give you an iPhone, it's absolutely worthless without the electrical grid and the cell towers and everything
Mhm.
else that's associated with it, and it takes time to build that. And the internet, it's like great, you know, even if we have the charging ability, I'm like, oh, I basically have an iPod. So it's
Right.
you know it,
And
it,
even that would eventually wear out
and
because the lithium batteries would eventually die after so many chargings, and then you just have, a weird curiosity made out of plastic and metal and glass and things like that nature.
exactly. And so I think there are some things like that. I do think um, there are discussions, and when he starts talking, it's bigger than this and bigger than that. Well, who knows on how some of those exaggerations come out to be, and if they just extend, because it sounds like reading through some of it is this was just a gateway, and then there's another continent past it, and that may have been the Americas for all we know.
From what I looked at on
Yeah,
the just any map, it looks like that, and we're finding weird stuff about the land we live in, things that are buried, etc. But again, let's not put the cart before the horse and start jumping to these wild ideas that are completely unsubstantiated, and you know
it, they like you said is why are they using wooden boats if they have all of these things? Why are they doing it? And it, the other
right.
part is like, okay, great. Even if you have certain technologies, let's assume that, like I said, there are lost technologies. There are certain technologies that they have maybe to go through stone faster. It doesn't mean that they have all the other aspects to
Oh
do
yeah,
things.
there's that excavation in the side of the mountain on Easter Island where it looks like they scooped out a perfect cube out of the mountain, but they did it and pulled
Yeah,
it out, and there's like a perfect squared back, when they were done. And I know they didn't, like have a beam or a weapon, an item that could cut through the mountain, but then not cut through the mountain, but also cut through the mountain. Otherwise, why would it be flat unless they were, you know, just carving it flat and just to make it a nice flat wall when they were done? I mean, it literally looks like they pulled a perfect cube out of the mountain and left a cube-sized hole straight
and
into the mountain. It's like that's crazy looking.
well, and there could be things that I mean, I liked looking at this when I got my paleontological. This is really cool when I started looking at
Hold on, let me.
stone equipment. Um, sure, but 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 one of the examples was I've heard in certain cases is that there are certain plants that they can make um, fluoric acid with.
Okay.
Now, fluoric acid will go right through glass, but it's also one of those things that would allow them to go through a lot of stone. And if you have granite, which has a lot of silica, which is your glass, that seems like it could be a way of going through there. That said, is no one would say do that if you have any kind of OSHA standard. So how
Well,
many
yeah,
people have
that's why
died
it's
to
such a
do this
massive,
stuff?
massive lips. Because they didn't have those things. They had monarchies and things like that, where people just had to do what they were told, regardless of whether or not they could survive doing it.
Well, in some cases,
And maybe people were willing to do that because they were told the right set of, uh,
you shall go to
religious
Valhalla
lies.
if you die. Yes.
Right. Do this and you'll go to heaven. Oh, okay, cool. You know,
All your
um,
sins are forgiven. Look at what you're doing. Hey, there are other motivations more than just
sure.
trying to whip
Yeah.
people. But I think
You
that
can't
it's
get people to do any of that these days on those kind of ground rules. And does that make us better? I
I,
don't know. I mean, it would be nice to see some projects started that were generational, but people were willing to do the heavy lifting for posterity. But
I,
that's no longer a thing. That's completely. gone out the window in my lifetime and longer.
I'm going
And
to
that's
bring up one of them. I'm going to bring up one of them. Crazy Horse.
okay. I had a feeling that's what you were talking about.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's and I think that that's
and look how fast that's moving along.
but here's the thing. We think of like, well, I want to see it in my lifetime. It's just like cathedrals that were built during the Middle Ages. Some of them took 200 or 300 years,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just like, okay, but I am part of this. This is my, and I guess I'm okay with that. It's just I. It's not something I would want to do, but you're right. If this leaves it to multiple generations to do, and how do I want to put this? Because a lot of our society has become very secular and believes that you only live one life and there's nothing past it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you believe that there's an afterlife and this is a way of getting there and maintaining a form of immortality, then
Well,
absolutely.
yeah. The Japanese had the saying, if you uh, have a son, write a book, and plant a tree, you're immortal.
Mhm.
That's like, in a secular way, that's the closest you're gonna get. Write a book, plant a tree, have a kid. Or maybe create some sort of big, structure, to bury your wealth and whatnot, and have the old King Tut funeral. And even then, that doesn't last forever. Even
Well,
books
we
don't
don't
last
think it lasts
forever.
forever. At the time, they did, and
Hmm.
and in some ways, like I was hearing them talk about, which I like to listen to. What is his name? Ben Van, some whatever. Anyway, he was doing the vases. The vases out of uh, granite and everything else.
Hmm.
Talking about how well they worked, and he said these are of a much higher quality than what can be generally given to just people working regular hand tools. Um, could it be worked with hand tools? Yes. Are they always perfect? No, but in certain cases, when you look at like the best, it's like it has a level of accuracy that is much higher than older. Sorry, not older, than younger generations.
Hmm.
You know why does it seem like the peak? Right, if we assume that everything's given to the Egyptians at the time, which is funny because the Egyptians don't say that they were. The Egyptians say this, there was older and we were inheritors of these
Hmm.
things. But our modern archaeology says no, this is from that date. Then it's like, and the same thing happens with the Incas. Why is
Hmm.
it that their greatest achievements seem to be the oldest, and as it moves through time, it gets worse and worse?
People just gave up, man. They figured, oh, we can't top that.
I don't know about
Yeah,
you. I'm kind of like, you know, I'm bad enough about video games. I think I can do one more run and save, an extra 5 seconds.
yeah, it's a very interesting field of exploration. Unfortunately, academia has kind of ruined it for everybody.
I think
And
I agree, but I guess this is why I don't want to ever become too jaded for things. We're finding out new things all the time. One is
and then
I'm
and then we quickly bury them right back up.
well, there's that. Well, I also have to appreciate our ancestors when you start looking at it. Is our ancestors knew so much more about the real world. Now they may not have known about science, but you know,
Oh
how many?
yeah, have you seen the book The Old Ways or the Lost Ways?
I've heard that. I've heard of it. I haven't.
It,
I've
it's
always seen
it's
it
it's
advertised.
it's it's like the preppers, Bible almost. All the ways that our settler ancestors, pioneered this country, and all the different recipes for this and that and medicines, and how they did the different things to just make it through the winter, that we as a species have just completely, at least here in the United States. I'm not going to speak too much on
Sure.
elsewhere because I know they have things really rough, and they probably have like a perfect example. Last night I watched a video on making a solar still on the beach and getting fresh water out of salt water, doing nothing more than digging a hole and covering it with plastic.
I
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my god, I was
well,
like blown away. I'm like, oh my god, this.
I mean,
My mind
I've
just
known
started
that.
running. You know what I mean?
I mean, I've known that for years, but I've also looked at it as like the it. It's enough usually to maybe get you a few ounces. So you have to make multiple solar stills
Yeah,
to
you,
actually.
you have to have a lot of plastic, or
Yep.
like, let's say 10 sheets of plastic, 2 foot each, 2 foot square each. Okay. And you dig 10 holes, you're
Right.
set. You're
Right.
set. Or you could
I,
just take a couple of glass bottles and some fire and do it that way. But then you're taking the minerals out of the water that you actually need. And after a while, you start suffering other problems. But in a pinch, and then the pirates, and the sailors, the old days, they had a way to distill salt water into regular water. But yet here in modern times, we don't think we need to do that, or
I'm
it's too expensive. What are you talking about? You dig a million little holes with a million little pieces of plastic, and you just collect
well.
it,
I'm
right?
going to bring up a little bit different, which is let's just probably your parents or maybe grandparents did, um, which is canning. Just making
Mm-hmm.
preserves. I mean
Mm-hmm.
that, and those would last for years, and it's just amazes me on the whole thing of you know,
It,
not that
you
I've
know,
done it.
what's weird about that I noticed um, during the pandemic,
Yeah, yeah.
all that stuff sold out and never came back on the shelves again.
What do you
All
mean?
those canning jars, all the sealing wax that you would find in your bakery aisle, all the glass, the special glass jars, and
Mm-hmm.
the wax. Go try and find it in your local grocery store. They don't carry it
Um.
anymore, or at least they don't in my area.
Hmm.
Because I was looking at, like, okay, maybe I'll learn how to do that, and then I went, it's like, oh, this is where it used to be. It's gone, and then it never came back.
I and maybe it's where I am for this, but still, people, and it could just depend, like you said, where you live.
Hmm.
Um, I know people still do canning, and I was talking to, and I've noticed that,
And
and,
preserving.
and it's and
But
it's
the
yeah,
preserved
both
jars and the
preserve
wax,
and like you said,
canning is
canning.
different. I never saw that here. I know you could mail for it and get it shipped to you
Sure.
and stuff. But I also live in an area that, if things got really bad in California, they would just stop delivering here as one of the very first places they would stop delivering. They would be
And from
like,
my
"Oh, they're laying them off."
and I know we argue about the prepping, but one of the things that does bother me, and they specifically mentioned California and was it the 1989 Lope Marita earthquake
Hmm.
was um, if they're because everyone's doing just on time delivery, you would be completely, and we saw this during 2020. Um, a lot of stuff just stopped being produced. I mean, like I found stuff that made it like I could not find oven cleaner for 4 months or 3 or 4 months. Like oven cleaner of all the things. Now, we there are ways of making your own, and that's part of the reason that I want to plant fruit trees and a few other things. It's like, okay, I have a couple of olive trees as well. Um, but I agree with you. And I actually use, well, I haven't done it in a while. I actually like those mason jar canning
Hmm.
to cook pumpkin pie.
I
I
saw
throw
I
it in the
saw a thing the
soup.
other day, on how the Amish preserve meat. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, I don't have the ability to get that meat, in quantity right now, but I would love to see and learn how to do it, so that when I get the hell out of California, that I could do that, and know how to do that. Just you know, uh, anytime you have leftovers or something like that, if there's a way to preserve it, then do so. Right?
I,
We're thinking about
I mean, I
getting
was
a
talking to
one of those vacuum sealers, for certain things.
oh, well, I was talking to one of my, well, he was a coworker, but he was closer to my father's age than mine. And he was talking about, oh yeah, you just did this. And, when we talk about salt, they used, to do a lot of it is, if you quartered an animal, you just threw it in basically a bin full of
Mhm.
salt.
Yeah,
And
I
that's,
saw how to do that, as well as sun drying and things like that. Uh,
uh, how about sun tea, which is one of the easiest things in the world to make? And I don't see it anymore for the most part. I'm surprised more people don't do it. To
or
me,
even the
one
big
is
glass things to make it in.
well, I did it in a mason jar in different size mason jars, I just threw it in there, closed the top, and I found two things. One is I didn't use as many tea bags to make a strong tasting
Mm-hmm.
tea. And then number two, it was like, this is super easy. I just leave it out there for,
Mm-hmm.
8 hours or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And that used to be one of those things that it was kind of fancy, but it's like, I don't mean fancy. I mean, that was the kind of thing I saw a lot of people do just during, the day. It's like, oh, instead of wasting all these tea bags, I'll just do, and I've done that with my son a few
Mm-hmm.
times. I just don't have, but no, I mean, like I said, I like using those 4 ounce mason jars. They are a perfect size for, and again, the mason jars are what you'd use for canning too, but they're a perfect size for pumpkin pie. And I make the pumpkin pie in
Mm-hmm.
them, and they're sealed. I can put them in the
And,
refrigerator
and and to
whenever
be
someone.
honest, it actually sounds like,
Yes,
the preserving jars
yep,
sounds like a better alternative in a lot of ways to the metal of, putting food in metal cans.
yeah.
And it's obviously got to have a hell of a lot longer shelf life and things like that. uh,
I don't. I don't know because I know that in some cases with canned food, it's been good up to 100 years.
mhm.
Um,
And it depends on
I
the
don't know
food.
about the glass.
It depends on the food, of
Sure.
course, but because of the way glass is, and that it doesn't, it takes so long for it to deteriorate. I mean, like
Yes.
millennia. If you just left it in a museum, it would be fine 1,000 years from now. Whereas metal, not so much, unless you put it in a completely hermetically sealed environment. And obviously, the food inside, depending on its acid count and things like that, would nullify any of those effects. But with glass, you can put, you know, sorry, I have to plug my charger in here. You can put
Yeah.
tomatoes and other acidic items in there, and it's not getting through the glass. It's not going to change. It's just going to
Yeah.
sit there, preserved, literally. That's and our ancestors could do a lot of things that we can't do. So them being able to do certain things, I'll grant, but the the attributing them of being able to do things that no, as far as we know, can't be done,
Okay.
even with the
Yeah.
most advanced sciences working on that project. We can't do. We can't make freaking, some of these magical crystal thingamajigs that's so prevalent in all the Atlantis folklore. It just blows my mind. I don't know when that got sort of introduced into the folklore that they had these. Uh,
I
I
talking about it, Atlantis. I think H.G. Wells. A lot of the writers because they heard about a lost world because all of us just love the idea of a lost world. So
absolutely.
whether it's
I mean,
Tarzan,
especially as a gamer, you know, one of the it's usually called Dungeons and Dragons, but a lot of times those dungeons were just ancient ruins of ancient societies or ancient places from an ancient society that you go and ransack. The Tomb Raider, that whole idea of finding lost treasures. You got to go somewhere. It can't just be, oh, it's just the always the laboratory of the mad wizard who recently died. Let's go ransack and steal his shit. Or things
boy,
like that. It's so many times, so many adventures were based on like ancient ruins. Hell, even in science
oh,
fiction, starting, let's
mhm.
just go with something recent, Total Recall and the stuff on Mars. Ancient ruins, ancient society, ancient technology. It's just ripe for the picking for fantastical stories.
And that's what I mean. So there's so much out there that we project. And even when you said, for Dungeons and Dragons, oh look, you've got the mage's castle, but what is he on? He's on a locus of power, which usually his dungeon is much older than he
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
Um, and then, for the aboleths and everything else,
I love those
um,
things.
well, them and the mind flayers, you start saying, oh, there's ancient civilizations down in the earth, which comes back to the hollow earth theory.
Hmm.
Um, and
At this
anyone that's
point,
ever
I'd
heard of
literally
this,
be more inclined to believe that than any stories of Atlantis at this very moment in time.
well, and of course, what they do with Atlantis is that Atlantis the hollow earth are all one and the same,
right. It's all
and
connected.
which
Uh,
which is what I loved about Warlord. Don't get me
oh my
wrong, I
God,
loved
I
it.
know, right? It had it all. Any of the great stories, you know, pull on these things, but then when you do a modicum of research, I mean, I literally, went from,
yeah,
you know, being this close to being on the woo woo train, right? And then I did about
mm-hmm.
6 hours of research, and mind you, not all at once, but spread out over a course of less than a week, and about maybe 3 hours of reading time, and some
yeah.
internet searches, etc. I'm like, oh, it's all been bullshit the whole time, and people are just so desirous to for it to be real. It's so much wishful thinking. If they would put all that effort, and then I started thinking about, yeah, if they would have put all that effort over the last couple of 100 years, instead of looking for that, doing something actually productive. Now, mind you, archaeology is productive, and I don't begrudge them their endeavor, but there's other places to go and things to look for other than, it's like, had they done the same research I did, because I would love for it to be true, but I
Sure.
couldn't deny the facts that were staring me plain in the face. It's like, oh yeah, even the
So this
internet,
is where
Wikipedia and a bunch of other places all call it fictional. And I'm like, oh, that's odd, because there's a whole lot of people that don't think it's fictional.
well, what I want to bring out is, and again, this is what I like because I don't know if things are true or not, but is it unlikely to me that there was, and I want to say again, when I want to say advanced civilization, it just simply means that a civilization that's ahead of what is normal accepted time. So if you
Or
have
even
something
just
that is
better than their
technically two,
neighbors.
well, that's what I mean. Is but like to me, Göbekli Tepe, looking at what's going on Göbekli Tepe, that was an advanced civilization compared to everything that we were taught as
Hmm.
children about the linear. Because that to me looks like it's at least 4 or 5 thousand years more recent. And while we talk about Göbekli Tepe, they also forget the Man of Ur. When you look at the Man of Ur, which is the statue from the same
Hmm.
time, you're looking at that and said, "Wait a minute, that looks like something that was done 5 or 6 thousand years later." And that's what I mean by that. It doesn't mean that they're more advanced than
Oh
we
God, no!
are.
I mean,
It just means that they're more
again,
advanced.
we could literally recreate Gobekli Tepe, at least what we see on the ground on the surface level, the
Yeah,
statues, those really cool. Hold on a second.
sure. Actually, we're all terrible human beings. That's how it's. Which I'm not looking at the YouTube here. Let's see if anyone's actually typing anything. Oh, there we go. Yep. Well, and I do know that we say different mindsets. I'm not so sure because I think a lot of them, what we say is just pure philosophy. I think they had a lot of science too. I mean, if you look at Archimedes, Archimedes was brilliant, and he was Greek. I will say, ancient people did have different mindsets though, and that a lot of things were to the gods.
Right. That's
Sorry, I
another
was just
thing
trying.
that it strikes me as really, really kind of important, but they discount because so much of what Plato described as, it's like a matter of factly that the gods were just a thing. They were there. They did their stuff. They did what they said they did, and like there was no evidence. You know what I mean? They just believed it,
Well,
which I
to
totally get.
them,
Being a Christian, I go on belief, not evidence. That's why there's two separate words. But
yeah.
they,
Well, to them, the gods were there, omnipresent and always around. Everything, every little thing, which is, and to be fair, I think in some ways, and maybe this is, I know she was talking about some of this being an allegory. I look at it as it's not necessarily an allegory. It's enticing that they're, and again, some people have placed it at Manoah, which was several thousand years after where they said he made a mistake. It should have been 900 years, not 9,000.
But he being a
There are,
storyteller and trying to make his point so desperately and vehemently, he could literally have just lied and made shit up to try to get his way.
I don't think so in certain ways. I think that there was enough evidence when they mentioned Solon, he was a well-known
even
individual
Aristotle
for Greece.
his protege thought he was full of shit.
Well,
I mean, if anybody
but,
would know him better than, you know what I mean? Just saying, they knew each other pretty well. I'm just saying. And
well, Plato, Socrates, they were all a lot of contemporaries. But I think part of it is that, and this is where I'd like to get more into Donnelly, but it does seem that there was communication in back and forth between the Americas and the old world, Europe and Middle East and Northern Africa at least. And I don't know about Sub-Saharan Africa. That's not a well-studied area, so I'm not trying to intentionally leave them out. There just isn't much exploration in a lot of those areas. But I think that there's, and that's what Donnelly was trying to say is, hey, look, here are similar stories all around the world.
I know a lot of people say the pyramid is just, the most logical construct. I'm like, and not really. Not really for a building that doesn't house people. You know what I mean? For a monument, it's like you just make a hill and throw something on top and you're good to go. No, they went out of their way to create this thing, and
and the only bodies that they found in the pyramids were not dated to the times that they supposedly were built. So that means
the continual creation of said structure, similar, obviously, the Mesoamerican and the Egyptian pyramids are pretty different, but they're still similar enough to make you go,
Well, the other part is that they talk about the same thing with the necropolis, which we haven't talked about for ancient Egypt. Which apparently, and they're starting to find out that it looks like there may be chambers, but it looks like, and I could be off on the sides, it looks like it's a kilometer by a kilometer, and it apparently has multiple levels. I'm like, wow, that if it is true, regardless of what it is, and whenever they speak about it, they say that it is greater than the pyramids. And then we have those locations in Turkey, which had been excavated, where it looks like they were hiding, thousands of people.
That's amazing. The doors that just move with a, simple hand swipe of, pressure because of the balance and things like that. That's freaking amazing. And to hide from, people, they hid so well that people forgot that it was even there for, hundreds or 1,000 years or whatever it was. And the acoustics and all the other cool shit that they were able to just hollow out. I'm assuming that it was more natural caverns that were finished as opposed to just completely hollow. Just start digging there. I don't think that's the way it was, but it could have been. But it seems like it's more likely that they found some natural caverns, decided to make use of them, and then sanded them down, so to speak, and made them more habitable. Was still an amazing accomplishment.
But I mean, for us, it's kind of funny. Of like, you look at our walls aren't in there, and then you look at these things, and they start measuring with lasers. It's like they seem to have a very perfect curve. And if it was just a cave, it's not that our ancestors didn't live in caves; they did many times, and then they were kicked out. But it's not like our ancestors went through and did massive amounts of labor to make them perfect on the inside. Like truly finished buildings on the inside. Because I don't know about you, but even when I was going down in certain areas in salt mines and coal mines, the old ones, they're still rough hewn, and some of those salt miners were down there up to the point, you want to talk about beauty, go look at the churches that they made inside that out of salt. and things like that. And you're like, okay, but I don't know what they got out of those other buildings. Like a salt mine, I fully understand. Hey, salt was valuable; it was worth excavating, and salt's fairly easy to work with. But when you're talking about granite, something had to inspire
Or
them.
diorite, or what's the
And
other one uh,
yeah,
up in
there's
Peru?
a basalt, there's granite, there's gabbro, there's different ones that are out there. Core, I can never remember it, but it's basically the similar material that rubies and sapphires are made out of, and and then they made vases out of it. And you look at the vases, and the vases that are from the Egyptians are just simple clay tops. Something sounds wrong. They made all these perfect things, and then they treated them kind of like debris. Several are broken, and the
Hmm.
serapeum. They said you can see all this stuff, and then I'm not saying everything's perfect. Sometimes I wonder if people are adding too much, but
Hmm.
what's going on with the serapeum? Why do you need such perfect corners and areas? And then they didn't even put anything in it that we can tell. Um,
Or maybe it's so
it,
old that it literally turned to dust.
oh yeah, but it's interesting looking at the
Hmm.
precision that and I don't care what anyone says, is I look at it's part of, which I say the human race. It's it's part of our, especially in Western ingrained culture, to have a lot of this
Hmm.
stuff. Now, maybe not so much if you're from China and that's not part of your culture, but our culture goes, both from the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, Babylonians, Sumerians. That had a big influence on things that we went with. That used to be our classical, um, aspects. I remember being as a child. We got Viking mythology. We got Greek and Roman gods, and we got Egyptian gods. Those were the big three.
Hmm. And there was nothing
Um,
else.
right there's nothing else. We aren't including any of the Irish. Screw those Irish. None of the Finnish, which is what Gygax. But where was Gygax? Gygax was up north, where they had a bunch of Finnish and
Hmm.
Swedes.
No, I just
um,
meant chronologically speaking.
I
In
know.
our history books, we started with the Sumerians, and there was nothing before that. And I'm like,
Well, he said, and now we know that's
yep.
false. Or what we did is it was the Sumerians were the first civilization, is what we're taught. Not, and we know that's
Oh
false
yeah.
now. We know Göbekli Tepe was
Oh yeah.
before then, um, and there seems to be a loss of technology for a few thousand
Hmm.
years, where it seems like we came up, we had Göbekli Tepe, which, and then there's nothing for it seems. I'm not saying this entirely because I have my friend did excavate stuff in Crete, but Göbekli Tepe was about 4,000 years before the stuff he found in
Hmm.
Crete. Um, and Crete had stuff going back 8,000 years, which again, they aren't teaching us this in school. And he did the actual excavations and things and said they were doing massive irrigation and things like that. So we know that there was some kind of society there.
Hmm.
Um, but that's not what we're taught because, let's be honest, wood decays. We might find some stuff in bogs or things like that down at the bottom. The other part is, at how many years was it when they said is it the Straits of Bosphorus? Anyway, the ones for the Black Sea. People aren't arguing that there aren't villages at the bottom of the Black Sea, uh, and and we say that they're probably, what is it, 8 or 9,000 years old. Well, could you imagine if, when those broke through, that how much water was coming
Hmm.
up and what that did to whatever civilization was in that area for the Black Sea. Um, was it Black Sea? Anyway, yeah, it's the anyway, but that whole area up there by Turkey.
Well, one of my
I mean,
favorites is the uh, I want to say Yamagumi, but that could be wrong. The discoveries, off the coast of Japan. Those weird looking like structures, freaking at the bottom of the
yeah,
ocean. Those are kind of neat. If they're natural, okay. Uh, but you can't help but look at it, and that's one of the things. When we were talking about the constellations, you look
yeah,
up. The human mind sees patterns or tries to make sense out of things. When we look at clouds, and it's like, oh, it looks like a dinosaur. There's an umbrella. That's what our brain does, whether we like it or not. We see things that that or try to understand what it is we're looking at, even though
And,
it might
and
be
I,
just something
and I do
randomly
recommend
shaped.
anyone that's trying to learn constellations, go get this book. It was written by the guy who did Curious George, and he just decided to redraw all the constellations to look like how the word, it was really like,
Hmm.
oh, that makes so much more sense. Hey, this is the
Yeah,
centaur.
it's like somewhere along the road, they decided to completely redraw them so they wouldn't look like what they used to look like. It's like what? I,
Oh,
I,
I
I
know.
mean, I every time I go out this time of year for, I think it's about the next 5 or 6 months, I go up and I see Orion, and I can instantly see the dude.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Well, I
But
was just, I mean, my favorite is, and I mentioned this with Ursa Major. Um, when he draws it out, which is this right here, this to me actually looks like something like a bear.
hmm
I'm like, oh, well, there's the head, there's the front paw, and I've seen something very similar to what they draw with, you know, to me, this looks like a polar bear. I'm not saying everything's perfect, but I'm like, oh, okay. But man, when you look at whatever they draw for what they teach in school, they're like, this doesn't look anything like a bear.
yeah, it's like they went out of their way to obscure that simple little nugget of information.
Oh yeah,
Because some academic thought, oh, I could draw it better. I
I
could make it look more bear-like, and then
I, I,
failed miserably, and everybody went, "Yeah, that looks like a bear. Here's
well,
your
I'm
grant."
I'm thinking that they said, well, these people, and well, these are the stars. We're just going to draw it, however, and the problem is it gets replicated, and so you get bad replications that constantly go on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this was the thing I was talking about. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but Hercules. Go
No,
look at
looks
a
like a
lot of
dude.
art.
I can see the stick man.
Well, no, I mean, but this is pretty good. This is pretty common. But go look at a lot of artwork, and you'll find this exact position or something very similar for most heroes in artwork from the Renaissance and before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Go look at. I was watching one of them. They're showing David and Goliath as he's carrying the sword, and he's in the exact same position. Um, so anyway, it's a great book. It's not that expensive. It just says it's called A New Way to See Them. And it's by the same guy who
Which
did
is
Curious
literally
George.
an old way to see them. Which
Well,
is
yes,
literally the old way to see them, right?
and
Is that
he
is that
appeared.
supposed to be tongue in cheek or?
Well, what he meant was that it was a new way compared to what they were teaching in school. He said, "Well, let me redraw it because this doesn't make any sense to me." And he and his wife were big into watching stars. And again, it's the same guy that did Curious George.
And literally, uh, for our ancestors, it was the television of the nighttime. Must see TV. Let's go outside, look at the stars, and oh, hey, Dad, that looks like a dude. Oh, yeah, you're right, son. I better make sure to tell your grandkids that.
I,
And
I mean,
right.
I've been out with my son, and like I said, he's a bit autistic, or autistic tendencies. And one is, if that kid ever gets lost, I know who I'm going with because he will find, like, point me to the North Star, son. I mean, which one's this? Which one's here? I mean, at one point, I actually took him to see, we took him out to the local observatory, which we have one about an hour and a half away. Um, and the guy says, well, you need to get this because he needs to learn the stars without, using a book or anything. I said, oh, really? Hey, son, tell him where this is. And my son points into the ground right about where Sirius would have been at that time of the night and said, there's Sirius this direction. And the astronomer was like, oh, okay. He doesn't need this type of telescope. He already knows all the stars. He's fine. Like, but the same thing happened with just talk about lost skills. The navigation the Polynesians
That's an
had.
amazing one.
It's well, the Polynesians apparently they used to have to tell them. They would sometimes blindfold them, and they had to hear by the oceans, the wind, the smell, and stuff like this, on how they were
Mhm.
navigating. And then I also heard that a lot of times they would follow the stars. Like it wasn't like us saying this is true north. It was this time of year, this time of the day, the star will be here, and this is the direction we need to follow. And they, I mean, they got to Easter Island. They got to, they had no problems going back and forth, to Hawaii, 1,000 years ago. So,
which is just fucking crazy if you think about it. I mean, like, well, what were they like? Reed boats and things like that.
they were, great big boats, but they used to put like 40 or 50 people on them, and they would sail like 2,000 miles with just the navigator
On
and say,
hay,
okay.
on bundled up hay.
Well, no, it was actually that they carved them out of trees, but
Who was it that used reeds?
those are usually like the marsh Arabs and stuff. But those would be, they lived in marshes, but they were not they didn't really go out and sail the oceans.
I could have swore some group of people did.
I'm not sure if they did the oceans, but let's be honest. If you can go 30 or 40 miles, most people can't even find their way around their city without having, Google Maps or Apple.
I know. You know who uses and I started it when we were first dating.
Yeah.
I got her one Christmas a Tom, I think it was.
Yeah, the Tom or Garmin. Yep.
I got her one of those, and now she uses her phone to go to places we've been to 100 times before, and I'm like, oh god, uh, and I'm like, I don't know the names of any street, but I can get to any place I've ever been to in the 2-3 city area that we now live sort of in. Any establishment, restaurant, business, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I may not know the streets, but I know which way to turn, etc. We'll be doing something. And I'm like, oh, turn left. She's like, how do you know? Just like just turn left.
I have to laugh because you want to talk about certain things, and apparently there's part of our brain that's gotten smaller as we've been relying more and more on that. Talk about mental capability for things. But I remember being in high school that I could get to my friend's house at night, but I couldn't do it during the day. And I realized it was because not that I was doing it consciously, but mentally I knew on how many streetlights I was passing over a certain period of time. And I'd be like, oh, we need to turn here. Because at night there were a certain number of streetlights. Now I wasn't counting. That was just, but you can sometimes get that intuitive feel. Like we need to turn here. Like, well, how do you know?
Or other landmarks that you're picking up on.
Yeah. Well, at night there were no other landmarks. But that's my point.
Well, I mean, other signs and things like that. The McDonald's, turn left at the McDonald's kind of thing, or whatever.
Oh yeah. No, I agree with that. It's one of those things that it's, and that's why sometimes when I hear that people saying that, they have to have high technology to do this, it's like, how about we find the lowest technology?
That's when I still thought aliens might be a possibility. I thought that traveling all that distance, the most important thing to bring with you would be information on like the equivalent of how to build things like a pyramid if you could use the right materials to create the Christopher Dunn and the other guys, their power plants out of rocks instead of bringing power plants with you. It would be to know how to do such magical things, like what Christopher Dunn and his friends suggest, instead of filling a giant starship with an ever increasing amount of fuel and energy requirements the more you carry, instead of just carrying information of the most mundane nature, but that you would have to be so advanced to be able to develop that kind of technology, so that you could make anything out of the bare scraps of rocks and sticks that you might find on any planet.
I think that's the one thing that does bother me about
Hey, George, I stopped memorizing phone numbers in 2003. People ask me my phone number all the time, and I'm like, how the hell would I know that? I don't call myself.
I I
You
have to
know,
look at my work phone on my cell phone because I never call myself. And
right?
so
And everybody
I,
looks at me
I
like, "Oh yeah, that's right. We don't call ourselves anymore." Yeah, because we don't have the the dial-up phone hanging on the wall anymore, or a pay phone because you got to call home to get a ride. You just have this this little plastic and glass doohickey that does it all for you.
well, the worst part is if you ever go to jail and like you get one phone call, you're like, uh,
I don't know
you know,
anybody. Help! Go back home and have them call me. You know.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's what happens a lot of times
Well,
here.
here's an idea. Don't
Call
get
this phone
arrested.
number.
But
I
right, exactly. But at the same time, we can pull up the spices of memes that even our ancient ancestors would get. No, not really, but
yeah.
we've lost a lot of things. Uh, I had the pizza parlor number memorized back then. I still know my very first phone number, 893-7136, from over 50 years ago, but I can't. There's two phone numbers I have memorized, and that's one of them.
When your parents beat it into you, you will remember this no matter
I
what.
was in kindergarten. I
Yes.
had to learn it, and I
Yeah.
did, and now it's useless. And because of that, that I'm holding on to that piece of information. There's probably some other more valuable piece of information I'll never be able to learn because it's taken. There's just not enough. There's not enough room up here anymore.
there, there's so many. I even look at these things of. I think so much is attributed to our ancestors, both good and bad. Perfect example is we wiped. When humans came to the Americas, they wiped everything out. And I remember having that argument with the guys. It looks like human beings have been in the Americas for like 10,000 years before the mammoths were wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
And the mammoths just suddenly seemed to get. I said, that'd be one thing to say, hey, we just wiped out everything. But I said, Eurasia, Europe, Asia, and North America all got wiped out within a couple of hundred years of each other. That seems awfully suspicious to me. Now, maybe we had an impact, but at the same time, our numbers went down a lot too, and civilizations. So sometimes, and I haven't read as much into it. And again, I sometimes like more mythology, but the discussions of the when the Spaniards came to the Americas, and they said, "Oh, maybe it's Quetzalcoatl," and you go, "Where do they get Quetzalcoatl from?" And they said, "Oh, these are maybe the gods." And this again, it comes to the Graham Hancock idea of there was a progenitor civilization that that occurred or is communicating to all of these different areas. What is that one that they call it with all the copper mining that went in North America? And again, things that we should be taught, but we aren't. But apparently, there was this massive group that did a lot of copper mining, and it's about the same time that the Bronze Age collapsed is when it seems that they stopped mining a lot of the copper. And you're like, well, how is copper suddenly coming over from this massive deposit in Michigan? I think like they did Oak Island or whatever it was, but how did that all occur from over there? And now it's going over to these other areas that, the bronze. I've been more impressed by bronze. All the time I thought bronze was crap. And now as I'm getting old, I'm like, no, we still use bronze for certain applications. And there's some really tough bronze. And just to let you in a secret, Shadow, I think if I was ever going to do magical weapons, they would all be bronze because bronze doesn't generally corrode. It gets that patina on it, but it doesn't. Like if you ever look at a sword, within a couple of hundred years of steel, a lot of it, if it's in the ground, it decays. But we still have these swords of from the Bronze Age.
Yeah, but weren't they much softer?
uh, they can be, um, but at the beginning, when we just went over from bronze to iron, a lot of it I think was cost because bronze requires tin and copper,
Mm-hmm.
and we can just get iron as a single source. Whereas I don't think that bronze and I don't think that tin and copper necessarily are always together. So I have to get it from one mine and I have to get it from another to make an alloy. But don't get me wrong. If you look at some of the really cool bronzes that they have now, like nickel bronze and aluminum bronze. Those are pretty damn tough.
Hmm.
And that's what I would say. Okay, that's your magical weapon. Plus, I love the look of bronze. Bronze to me has that just gorgeous color when it's new.
I don't know. I always get bronze, brass, and gold. From a distance, to me, they just look the same.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Especially with paint, I'm like, yeah, it's all gold. Especially when it's just this tiny little sword hilt or something. Um,
Yeah, gold's one of those that, well, unless you're painting with gold leaf, they're going to use something else which matches all the other colors anyway. So,
do you happen to remember the name of the book you were talking about at the beginning of the show?
so there's a couple of them. So you're talking about with Moo.
Yes,
So
I'd like to if I have the time.
James.
Hold on, let me get a pen.
So okay,
Go ahead.
James Church Ward, Ward at the end. So Church Ward, and it was the books were The Lost Continent of Mu, The Children of Mu, and The Sacred Symbols of Mu. And that basically you're looking at the dates should be, depending on which version you have, 1926 to 1933.
19 what?
1926 to 1933. I mean, I'm going to look up at Amazon here.
Okay.
But
now, when you were reading them, when you were reading these books, do you remember any crystal technologies, any flying airships, submarines, any of that?
again, we're talking 40 plus years here. High technology. I think that was in the third book. I read all three of them. Sorry.
Okay.
And I don't know if, but but I think it was that last book, which was the.
And even this 1926 isn't all that long ago. 101
Mu,
years, as
and then you have
no.
Mu
I mean,
and
when they were
Atlantis. That Mu was generally considered in the Pacific. Atlantis was, of course, considered in the Atlantic. And I think that Howard and a few of these, maybe not Howard. Howard did Atlantis, but I think that it was
Clark Ashton Smith.
I think Lovecraft did some of that. And then, let's be honest, when you're fantasy writers, you're like, ooh, I'll tag on to whatever's there. Here, let's go to Lemuria or Atlantis.
I just, but there's nothing prior to that in regards to Mu or Lemuria.
I think there was Lemuria was done by a biologist. Interestingly enough,
the lemmings.
And he was mentioning it, but then they started conflating the two. Just like I said, any lost land they conflate with all of it. So
that's kind of an unfortunate sort of game of telephone we've been playing over the millennia when it comes to this sort of thing, because it seems like there were some people after Plato talking about Atlantis and Bacon and others, but it's not until it's kind of like with the UFO phenomenon. In the ancient days, it was shields flying in the sky. During the 1900s, they were blimps and things like that. And then modern age, they're now crazy super fast spaceships. You know what I mean? And it's almost like the these kind of sightings and ideas are somewhat parallel to their own technological level, or maybe it's just their only way to describe them, like chariots in the sky when that's all they had was chariots and
Yeah,
boats. Why they didn't call them boats? I don't. That doesn't make any sense. You know what
I,
I mean? Unless they actually had wheels for landing gear, in which that would make some sense.
I, these are the things that like the burning chariot, which we have to joke about the chariot assist there that Cal likes doing all the time.
Can't
Um,
blame them.
that was based off of, if I remember correctly, and I forgot, that was based off of Apollo as he went across the sun,
Right.
and you know, and when he let his son get onto that. And again, I like listening to Randall Carlson because he went through a lot of it, and he's had a lot more time to do it. But he was describing it. When you start listening to it, you're like, that sounds like that could be a comet because when it hit the ground, they said there was a giant explosion. And then they said all of his sisters started weeping, which flooded the land. And you're like, okay. And then I was hearing them talk about, because he was talking about some of the descriptions of the, I cannot remember, but the meteor impact in Russia in the early 1900s, like
Tunguska.
1906, whatever. Well, they interviewed some of the reindeer herders, and they kind of described it like a lance from the sky with a giant dragon breathing. And I agree with you. We can only describe things on what we have experience with, or that we have some kind of
Mm-hmm.
I want to say memory of, but
Hands-on knowledge,
yeah,
some
yeah.
experience.
It's like, well, what would we call now we all say mind flayers, but we'd probably say, ooh, it's a guy with a squid for a head.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, okay. But I agree with you. Is there's always discussions about that, and then the real question is, are they aliens, or is it just things that we saw from the sky? Because I don't know about you, but I've been in some pretty big thunderstorms and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden you believe there are gods, and you're willing to, like, please don't smite me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I've been well, I've been struck by lightning, so
yeah.
yeah, I can see how our ancestors who didn't know any better, and who's to say that we do know better? Well, science, but okay. Um,
Well, science only tells us what we can observe, and the problem that I have with some of it is
and,
that
and most of it, can't be tested because we don't have that kind of, hey, what's up, Bear?
the other one I was listening to, again, we're talking about, um, and again, I like listening to some of these other guys, but they had
Okay, man, don't worry about it.
what was it, Robert Schoch, where he was talking about certain cases of, if there's enough electromagnetism, you actually get a lot of those figures that you see down in the Ayers Rock in Australia.
No, I'm not
Where,
familiar with that.
so they have these figures that they come over, and they look like human figures, so like legs and arms and like a head. And then they
Okay, I
have,
think I might have seen him talk about that, but they're like so weathered and so old that it could just be uh, coincidence because you can't see any.
apparently, if you get enough electromagnetism, you can create some of these figures. Um,
Oh,
you
okay, I
know,
was thinking something else.
that's what I mean. Is like in the lab, they can get it to somewhat replicate. Which, this is the other part that always gets to me is modern day. It doesn't seem like we have any problems of saying, yeah, the dinosaurs were wiped out by a meteor, but my God, the and
Toroids or something like that.
well, the toroids are other things in the background. Yeah, maybe it is the toroid. Anyway, yeah, I think maybe it is the toroids. But yeah, there's just different figures out there, which is why I say, okay, let's see what it could be. And again, it doesn't say that it is 100%. I think that's the problem. People say it must be this. And my view is it could be this, but we need more evidence. What I
Mm-hmm.
don't like is no. Like, well, we have some evidence, so you can't say no. What you can say is we don't have enough evidence to say it is this, which is a different thing.
Kind of
Um,
like my pet peeve when people say evidence when it's or proof. I say they
yeah,
say proof, and I say that's compelling evidence. It's not proof because you can't take that into a court of law and get a verdict off it. But you can make a compelling argument,
right.
and a lot of people these days are just like, no, this is proof. No, no, ancient aliens ruined that word for everybody about a decade ago.
Well, see, I always got so mad at them because, again, my view is that, hypothesis versus the word theory, and growing up around with science, and the other part was repeatability.
Yeah, there's none of
like,
that.
If well, a lot of our science is repeatable. It's like, okay, but a lot of stuff is, if it's a one-off thing, we don't know. Like, one of my favorite things is, you want to talk about weird stuff, is during earthquakes, why do we get all this light that appears? And it took people have been mentioning that probably for what, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And finally, scientists are admitting, yeah, that does happen. But for the longest time, they're just crazy. They don't know anything. Just like, our ancestors, I don't want to say, with limited information, were not stupid. They may have been misguided, but they weren't stupid. And I think that's sometimes the
spinning
arrogance.
plasma torus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's yep. There we go. But there's so many cool things out there. It's like, all right, let's see what could occur. And again, coming from the role playing side, and I told my son this, I said, what you're going to hear are ideas. They may or may not be wrong, but they're compelling, and I love them, and I'm going to throw them into my game, regardless of whether they're real or not.
Yeah. Well, being a Texan, you never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly.
And that's part of what this part of my Atlantis deep dive is not to let fiction become fact. I can safely pigeonhole this stuff in fiction, this stuff in fact, and keep them where they belong and enjoy them equally. Oh, okay. Let me check what Bear just sent me here.
All right.
Message you on Discord. Come on. Sure, Bear. Actually, do I have it?
But see, what I get more frustrated by is when people don't want to have discussions.
Nope, that's the wrong link. Let me delete that.
But if you've ever noticed, so many people don't want to have the discussion because but it has to be this. Like, why? Why can't we have competing ideas on explanations?
Thanks, George. I just saw the link you sent me.
Man, people get angry about that.
Well, they want to be right, and that's the one thing I didn't care about when I'm into this. I just want. Sorry, trying to get the link to you, Bear, but my hands are retarded.
Well, it's just like, and I'm not saying I believe this, but whenever I hear people putting down someone that believes the Earth is flat, and I said, well, I've done the math, okay? I can bring up plenty of evidence to show you it's round. What bothers me is that these people, instead of trying to argue about, well, how can you explain this or how can you explain that, they instead are just like, I'm so much smarter than you are, and like, well, okay, prove that the Earth is round, and they're just like, like, really, guys?
And then they'll do the ancient alien thing, give you examples of across something on the other side of the planet that has nothing to do with what you're talking about, thinking that that's evidence. No, that's just.
Oh, I'm wearing the wrong shirt. Oh, hey, Omanel.
No. You're doing
We're
discussing Atlantis.
What's up, Mac?
But if I had Cull, that would be better. But oh well.
Yes. Well, that's true. Well, we're talking about thousands of years.
So just a couple of quick things I wanted to jump in on. One with Robert Schock. His stuff is really great because what he does is he shows the connections between, say, like Mohenjo-Daro and Easter Island and things like that. But these ideas of these spinning plasma toruses is that when you observe them under the observatron, whatever the hell the thing they used to look at them is, it creates this figure that has two arms up, two legs down, and spinning energy around its waist. Well, this we find carved into various petroglyphs around the world, and tend to date to within about 12,000 BC, which would be exactly the time of the Younger Dryas. So his theory is that the Younger Dryas was a massive electrical storm or plasma storm that hit the Earth. So these figures were appearing in the sky above everybody's heads. So primitive men were looking up and they were seeing gods fighting each other, these humanoid shapes casting plasma, destroying the earth under their feet. And only those who were able to retreat into caves were able to survive this entire experience. And he firmly believes that the oral tradition of that was then handed down through the tribal people, continuing all the way up till today, and having mutated over time like broken telephones to get a lot of the mythologies we have. So that's really interesting stuff. Not 100% proven.
I love the idea. What bothers me is that when academia just throws it out. And I'm glad that Robert Schoch actually has the ability to do that stuff. But when he was getting attacked, his ability to say how long the Sphinx had been out based on weathering, and you're just like, and I remember this in the early '90s. I was like, why is there so much anger towards him for bringing out?
So now here's the second part. Here's the second part of this, specifically with Egyptology, but in general, we all know science is not, like, for all their pontification about the scientific method and all that, science is a cult and it's business. And when I say science, I mean the idea of the institutions of science, right? Now they live and die by publishing and getting grants and what have you. So they kind of get away from that. The problem with Egyptology is that it is evident and proven that the four greatest lies ever told by Egypt are: one, that the Jews were slaves in Egypt, because there's zero evidence left behind of that, to the point where everywhere else the Jews were, there was tons of evidence left behind that they were there. But for some reason in Egypt, where they were there for hundreds of years being forced to build pyramids, and there's zero evidence of that that's left behind in the archaeological record, which is a strange thing. Two, the other big lie is that the Egyptian people that are there now are the same Egyptians that built the Sphinx and the pyramids and all this other stuff. And it's starting to look like that's not the case. That's starting to look like desert nomads migrated in and took over the culture that was there already. Because Egypt, don't forget, Egypt walks into history fully formed and then begins its decline. We don't have the slow, subtle buildup like we do for other civilizations.
Well, because don't you remember from the Stargate movie, they were all taken over.
No, exactly. The third big lie of Egypt is that the Sphinx is only 3,000 years old or whatever it is. Yeah, which is no, it's clearly much, much older than that. And the head was carved down. And the big tablet in front that talks about who built it, there's a big chunk of it missing. And it's well within reason to say that that chunk explains that he didn't build it, but he had it restored in his image, and why the head was shaved down. Why is every other Sphinx in Egypt that they find in statuaries and stuff like that, the head is perfectly proportioned to the body to look like a lion, except the Great Sphinx, the biggest one? Nope, the head's super small on that. Why?
What's the never mind.
Sorry, the fourth lie, real fast, and then we'll tear it apart if we want. The Great Pyramid of Cheops was a tomb.
Right. Well, that's we talked about that before you joined us. Is the only bodies they've found of the pyramids are nowhere near the dates of the time that the pyramids were supposedly constructed. We're talking like 2,000 or 4,000, 2,000 or 3,000 years after. That's just how it's like. Oh. That's like throwing me into the pyramid now and saying, well, obviously it was that's where they buried their dad. You're like, oh no.
Yeah. but guys like Zahi Hawass spent a lot of years debunking stuff and silencing things and hiding things, because the Egyptian government and the Egyptian people have a huge investment in this. They make a lot of money every year off tourism.
Yep.
So,
But here's what gets me is, and I'm going to bring up when I was there, I wish I remember the guy's name. His argument was, and I didn't get to go to, they had the tour with Randall Carlson out there, but there were several geologists actually, and I wish I knew the geologist's name, but I wanted to find out what his opinion was. But the guy was using the argument that the limestone, we're not talking about the granite's a different aspect, but the limestone was actually a form of concrete, and he was trying to, and it was actually really compelling. And that's what I want to say is the evidence is compelling, not definitive.
No.
And to me, it makes so much more sense if you're just talking about something it's not that hard.
They're just pouring the bricks as they needed them for the pyramids?
Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, if you look at...
It makes way more sense than massive whips.
Yeah. Oh, well, everyone says whips, but now I think they've got that's the other one is the Egyptian pyramids were built by slaves, and they're saying, well, now they weren't,
Yeah,
Now
that was a labor
changed.
of love for the pharaoh who they all loved, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's probably
sorry, go ahead.
It's probably the same reason
So
that
you
all the
work
other
for the
people are building.
Egyptian tourism department?
Seriously.
Well, no, I just meant it's just like contractors. Hey, you tell me to build something, boss. You're going to feed me, okay? But
My friend Justin Kaufman had the best line ever. He's a Jewish guy. He said, pyramids built by aliens? Yeah, I can believe that, because the alternate theory is that my people did physical labor. It was like, that's brilliant, Justin. Well done.
Well, here's the point. It's like, since they could be formed, it's much easier for me to carry up a lot of dry material on my back at 50 pounds rather than trying to move thousands of pounds at once. And then when you need to,
enjoy your book, Mac.
Then you can go back to, liquid
Mm-hmm.
to actually do the, to actually cement it in place. And this guy was showing pictures of, blocks that had been removed, or blocks that had been just simply moved, and you could see where, like, where there's where something protrudes out of one block and it goes into where the other block is. He says, you aren't telling me that people are forming this exactly to match that protrusion. They would just knock it off if that's what the plan was. And so it was very compelling. It was in 2006, I believe.
What's up, Adam?
At A&M.
Well, they found the birds that use that weird. They use a wood that melts rock. I think that was in the Andes. They found that, where they were trying to figure out how these birds were drilling these holes right into the cliff faces, and then they observed them long enough. They saw there's a type of wood they use that causes a chemical reaction that melts holes in the stone. And this is like years ago I heard about this. And I was like, okay. So people were saying, well, maybe they knew something about that. There's a whole bunch of theories, right? But when we get down to it, the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Cheops itself, never mind everything else, the Valley of Kings, all the other pyramids, never mind that. Just the Great Pyramid of Cheops is an absolute engineering marvel that we cannot produce today. It would be nigh impossible for us to get the measurements as exact as they got them. And we're talking working with lasers, today. So it's a miracle.
I'm just as a civil engineer, we could do it.
Well,
there would just be no.
A lot of civil engineers disagree, and when they had a university group try and build a small one, they failed. So, I'm
going to. I've looked at it. I'll be honest. The problem that I have is trying to get a contractor that can do it.
Well, I think
a whole different issue.
Yeah, but I also think they're saying within the time period that they say it was done would be.
Yeah. Oh no, I agree with
23 years. Like they're moving millions and millions of tons of granite. They I remember the math on it. I can't remember what it was, but they had to lay like 10 bricks every 2.5 minutes or something like that to achieve the timetable.
Yes.
I've heard something similar. That's why I think it was more poured than quarry.
Well,
not for the granite.
And I did well, and the granite was a different part of it too. That's why I said I'm not including the granite, but and I agree with it. I don't think it took 30 years. I think it took a much longer time period.
I think someone else did it.
Well, but again, you can still do it. Well, what also gets me is on how fast they can do drilling through granite
with copper and water.
Insane.
Supposedly, yeah, it was. Well, and what we're talking about is not that we can't match the same speeds, but we can't do it in the same number of rotations. Like they can do it in like 10 rotations, and it would probably take us 200 or 300 rotations to do it.
Fair. Now I'm going to bring it back on topic of Atlantis, if you don't mind. I don't believe the Atlanteans built the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, or any of that nonsense. I believe perhaps the descendants, if there was an Atlantis, if there was a great civilization that was destroyed in a cataclysm, the Younger Dryas, you can trace this lovely band around the Earth of megalithic structures that would correlate, they say, with a equatorial shift, like a polar shift, like the equator is here now, but this band is like this, and in the Younger Dryas, that could have been the equator, and then during the Younger Dryas, there was the shift. That's possible. I don't know. But we see far too many signs that there was some sort of globe-spanning civilization sharing something and doing something. Were they the refugees of a lost civilization? I don't know. I don't think they had crystal lasers and starships or any of that nonsense.
Yeah, we already went through that. Plato, from his words, proved that none of that shit was part of the equation. It,
He never describes anything about being super high technology for there.
but he also, with his other statements, kind of keeps it pretty damn grounded
Yes.
to nothing remotely science fictional, or similar, or even fantasy other than the gods. Even the gods didn't do anything fantastic in the account, other than maybe
Other
other than digging
other than
over.
sinking Atlantis.
Well,
Yeah,
there's
other than
that.
sinking
There's that.
Atlantis. Yeah, but no, the Atlanteans themselves never come off as anything more than great architects, if you wanted to say, based on the things that he describes that they built.
Yeah,
To
and
be
if
honest,
if they had a century to do, or 2 centuries to do some of the stuff that we see, makes perfect sense.
actually, the only remarkable thing they had was their navy that used triremes 9,000 years before Athens. So this great, fabulous navy actually made no innovations on the sailing
And,
ship,
and,
just on logistics.
and the people of Athens beat them back. So there was that. It
Yeah, a
was
tiny little
I,
kingdom beat
well,
a superior force of like 10,000 to 1, but they beat them back with morals.
let's say 2001, but it doesn't take too much of, even as much as people talk about the Spaniards beating the Mayans and stuff like this. So much of that was from, which people forget about the two things. One is, it wasn't the Spanish alone. They had about 20 to 30,000 natives that were helping them at the same time.
And didn't they have
And
like
then
cholera or something working on their side too?
smallpox.
Smallpox?
Yeah, and smallpox. So, I mean, it was a combination of factors, but I remember growing up as a kid, it was 200 Spanish beat the entire Mayan. And then they completely ignored the 20 to 30,000 natives that didn't like the Mayans either.
No, the Aztecs. They hated the Aztecs.
Oh, yes.
They were tired of
right.
like, we're sick of assholes taking our hearts out. We'll help you kill these fuckers.
Yeah, right.
Well, exactly. And that's what I mean. But growing up as a kid, it was 200 or whatever it was.
Well, there's also the account in the Art of War where like 2,500 horsemen beat off or defeated, excuse me, before someone makes a joke, defeated over 1 million, infantry. Yeah, 'cause they had to pass, and they bottlenecked them. Yeah, and the retarded footmen just kept coming through the gap where they could just be slaughtered. That's not really a,
Well, I'm gonna bring up the other part too, which is, because I remember my son doing this, is he was saying it was 1,000 miles away or 1,000,000 miles away, and it was just his way of explaining that something was larger than something else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and we have to remember that large bodies of water at that time were referred to as seas. Even and land masses were called islands. Even if they were continents, they still just used the word. It was like a blanket term. So a lot of it gets confused in the translation. A lot of it gets confused by modern ideas being sort of placed on what they were talking about then. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, we're never going to get the answer. I mean, it's too far.
Well, we should ask Nerds. She probably knows.
She was there. What are you talking about? She was the last empress of Atlantis. She was the one who launched the ships before she retreated into the crystal longevity case.
I thought that she was responsible for the fall of Troy, but
Well, 6 of one, half dozen the other, brother. I mean, come on.
She's immortal. She just goes from time to time, and everything that's blamed on
her and Shadow have been fighting their immortal game of chess for millennia now. All right.
Well, thank you for bringing up all those vampire games with the antediluvians.
Hey, you keep my friends out of this.
I'm saying, but yeah, I don't subscribe to the Edgar Casey stuff at all. I don't subscribe to a lot of stuff.
I don't know how he did some of the stuff he did, other than it was a big giant hoax, which explains it all. Not how.
Yeah, how he pulled it off is the question. But I mean, look, it's fool sucker born every minute and 2 to take him, right? That's just the way it goes.
But the woo woo science fictiony stuff, it doesn't come into the discussion until modern technology can kind of keep up with it. Almost as if like science fiction writers help influence the Atlantis story as it as time went on, and it wasn't until less than a couple hundred years ago that Atlantis started becoming this sci-fi space age, otherworldly
Well,
thing.
yeah. Up until like
And
a
that was
century or so ago, more was written on Lionesse than there was ever written on Atlantis. I mean,
Mhm.
let's be honest.
I think Donnelly was the one that really did the Atlantis thing, and everything I've read so far is he's just pulling out all of the history that he can, and it's interesting looking at some of the things where you go, it sounds like plate tectonics before they do about plate tectonics. Oh, speaking of which, talk about science. My God, the guy who came up with plate tectonics, they just lambasted him for decades.
Mhm.
And
Oh
then
yeah,
said,
yeah.
oh,
They tore that guy up. They tore a new asshole. But now take it. My theory. My theory. It's a theory. It is mine. The Brontosaurus was very thin at one end, big in the middle, and thin again. My theory on this is that I like the one that says Antarctica was what we think of as Atlantis. And then during the Younger Dryas, there was the polar shift, which caused it to shift to the bottom of the world as opposed to being about where Australia would be today. So it had a beautiful, lush, temperate climate, jungles, what have you, and a civilization. And then, boom. And then the refugees from Atlantis spread out around the world and brought what knowledge they could to the people and doing what they can, including Mesoamerica, where we get the idea of the white brothers coming, and that's why they were like looking at the Spaniards going, oh yeah, these are the guys we were told were going to come back, Quetzalcoatl, all that, which wasn't them. It was just coincidence.
Maybe.
well, they also
Having recently gone through, you weren't here, but having recently gone through the Timaeus and the Critias, I don't think Atlantis ever actually existed. It might have
That's
been
fair.
a completely different place at a different time, etc. And Plato just happened to, make something up that existed somewhere else, and he didn't know about it. But
I mean, look, he's working from an unreliable narrator in Solon to begin with, right? So,
or he made him up.
or he made him up.
well, and the problem that we have is the records are destroyed. I mean, even the ones that let's assume that.
Oh yeah,
the
the end of the story, the Timaeus, the Critias, and there was supposed to be a third volume, and it never got written.
Well, we don't know if it ever got written or it could have gotten destroyed.
In the remember, the Library of Alexandria was a huge loss of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Huge.
But there's no record of the third installment, kind of like Hero's Journey. And
well, the author died before he could finish.
And that's entirely possible.
The other part
was old as fuck.
Is when you look at some of the maps, which I find very interesting when they do talk about this, is the Turkish maps where they're putting things down on like Antarctica, which wasn't discovered until what was it, about 200 years ago or something.
Well, clearly it was discovered. It just nobody got credit for it.
Well, but my point being is that the map is showing it, even though, and they said they got it from older maps. The map, it's showing on a map, but no one had proof of it until like 200 years ago. That's what I'm trying to say is, it just seems like our world was far more interconnected, much further back than anyone really wants to say it was. That's all I was trying to say. And it doesn't, to me, it really doesn't matter where Atlantis is so much. It just sounds like there was communication. Like what, and again, I don't know how true this is, but they were saying that they were finding cocaine in mummies, and
tobacco.
And you're going, wait a minute, that means ignoring everything else about fantastic stuff.
I gotta ask a real quick question. Did they drug test any of the archaeologists?
Well, this is again. Hang on. Here's the beauty of it. The way they tried to dismiss the discovery of tobacco and cocaine in the mummies' stomachs was they literally, wait till you hear this, you're gonna blow your mind. The people doing the autopsy were careless and spilled that in. So they were literally saying, no, our autopsy guys, our forensic guys were on coke and smoking while they were doing these autopsies.
Well, and apparently they found that it looks like it went, going all around the world. Is that I think they found it in Polynesia too.
Yeah.
And it's we know that our world was more interconnected. Well, I saw one which was Secrets of the Dead, which I thought was pretty cool. They were talking about a group of Iberians from 2,000 years ago that they have evidence left the Iberian Peninsula and went into the Americas.
Well, dude, there's is it the Mayans? I think it's the Mayans or the Incas. One of them, in their written language, there are a few symbols that are very, very close to certain Egyptian hieroglyphics, thereby
Yeah.
implying the sail around, right? But then we also get the theory of Lemuria, which is different than Mu, and the whole thing of Lemuria, Easter Island being the southernmost tip of it, and there's all these crazy theories because we have to accept one accurate statement, at least I do, which is that what we are being told is history by the supposed knowledge people is not history. It's what they suspect or believe or are convinced history is, and they have invested a lot of ego into being right, so therefore they're not open to new things.
It seems to me it's that they've chosen a set of rules and laws and theories that were created by people who made a bunch of big mistakes, but they can't admit to having made these mistakes, and they're just going to stick with the doctrine from 100, 200 years ago, whatever, and they're just going to stick with that because it's easier than saying, "Oops, so and so was wrong," and now we're going to do some actual real research.
Well, a perfect example is the Bluefish Caves. The guy had all of his evidence, had DNA and everything else, and for 20 years they mocked him, they ignored him, and finally the Smithsonian said, "Oh, it's a terrible thing that happened to him because he was right." And I'm another good example was, and I still have people arguing about this, is I'm about 30 miles away, within 30 miles, it's within my county, the largest site of Clovis artifacts in the country. And they have gone back and showed that, they went all the way down to bedrock. And they've shown that people have been here for at least 18,000 years in this county. And for the longest time, they just kept arguing, "Oh no, humans weren't there." And even when the evidence was doing this, the same thing now that they have the footprints over New Mexico, they just acted like, no, that is anything new. I said, you don't just come to Texas easily. And then I think this is a big factor. Ignoring other part is there's no disagreement that sea level has risen by 400 feet. Imagine, and if you look just at our coastal cities, imagine how much is underwater.
No, the Bimini Road, the great temple off of Japan. Oh, wait, the city of Krishna in the Indus River Valley that they said never existed. No way, it doesn't exist. They find it 100 feet offshore under the water.
Yeah, Dorcas.
Yeah. It's the city of
well,
Krishna,
and there's some of them that what amazes me is it's a lot of people who've never been there are dismissing it, and then anyone that says they have, they completely. Well, a perfect example is
Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock.
Oh.
Every time I hear someone go, "Fucking Graham Hancock, he's full of shit." The man went to all these sites, you idiots. You just looked at pictures. He went to them.
Yeah, but so did Eric von Daniken.
Von Daniken had a book that he was selling based on his weird ass theories. Graham Hancock was literally, if you read Fingerprints of the Gods, he lays it at the start, his thesis, which is, I'm going to these places to see what I can see because of all the stories that come up about them. And then when he sees them, he says, "Oh, wow, there is something weird going on here. There is a connectivity."
So I have a friend of mine who really hates Graham Hancock with a passion. He's like, it's disrupting, archaeology, and he's disgracing us.
You mean the doctrine that they've all agreed upon?
Well,
That's not how science works.
Wait a minute. No. Here's what you're missing about the whole point. My friend is railing against the same people that Graham Hancock is, but he says, well, it's made our profession disreputable. I said, it's not Graham Hancock that did it. It's these people that you hate, the Ivory Tower, which I'm going to call the Ivory Tower.
It kind of reminds me of like rollerball, in that you can't have a celebrity in the profession.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Here's what I have a few friends over. There's a professional jealousy because Graham Hancock is bringing things. That's one. Number two is it's forcing archaeology to be questioned.
Well, he kind of made it sexy again. Not that it ever was, but you know what I mean? He made it exciting instead of, dusty, dry, and boring.
But see, this is what gets me about the whole thing. I'm not saying that. It's the point is that he's forcing people to ask questions that were only supposed to happen in the halls of academia, and where and then we are the gatekeepers of what is true or not. And that's what I mean. The same thing happened during COVID. Is we are the gatekeepers. Do not listen to anyone else. Ignore your lying eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, well,
I
wait,
can't stand that sort of.
well, neither can I.
Well, I refer to these people as
me.
intelligentsia, right? This is the intelligentsia
Yes.
of any group. And they are really obnoxious. Like there's a thing going on in former Yugoslavia, I think it's Serbia, Bosnia, the Pyramid Mountain, where they're like, there's a pyramid under this fucking mountain. And everybody's like, no, there isn't, no. And then they started digging around a little bit before they got stopped, and they started finding cut blocks and shit. And they're like, there's tunnels and something under this. No, it's a natural formation. It's a very rare volcanic Mukadokotikitu type mountain. And it's just like,
that's I've seen there's supposedly the water there is healing properties. And,
well, then that's the woo-woo. Let's get into the woo-woo.
Right.
But I'm just saying,
Right.
There's a fucking mountain with 3 sides, and sharp angles.
I'm going to bring up the other one, which was because we went up there in the in Washington State and the and Idaho and in Montana, where they talk about the Missoula floods. And for the longest time, people did not want to believe it. Of like, well, there's no way these floods were 2,000 feet tall.
Well, this is the sorry, is that the area where you're talking about up there? Is that where it's the was it the Gate of the Dead or something, where they just found like hundreds of skeletons in a field essentially, and like they're like, we presume it was a big native war, and they're like, the natives are like, no, we don't have that legend. Nope. So now it's
I think they could be lying.
No, but they natives love to fuck with white people, dude. They absolutely adore fucking with us. It's like their favorite pastime, right? So in this case, they're saying we don't have anything to do with that. And some people are saying there could have been a massive flood or something that happened around the end of the Ice Age that wiped out all these people traveling, right? And they basically just left their bodies there after they were drowned or whatever. So there's all this weird shit. Sorry, keep going about what you're talking about, the Missoula flood.
Oh, well, so, we were talking about this earlier. Having been out in some of those areas, and you can see is if I was one of the few survivors left, and let's be honest, is when we talk about loss of knowledge. If you're one, if you have like 200 or 300 people in a village or something like that, and there are only 5 or 6 of you left, I mean, and you survive at the bare minimum, and we're talking floods that lasted a couple of weeks. First off, you lose almost all that institutional knowledge. That's one. Number 2 is you believe that this was a divine act of God. I don't care whether you're an atheist or not. It's kind of, it's like, this was for our wickedness, which a lot of them do say it's for wickedness that we were punished, for whatever's going on.
Sure. But at the same time, look at the Chinese pyramids, right? I'm sure you've looked into those. China won't let anyone near them. They let one guy take pictures, and now no one's allowed to anymore. And they're encouraging farmers to plant trees on them now to destroy them with the roots. What is this obsessive need to destroy this stuff? What's
I have a theory. It's crazy, but I might just be right. So you got to bear with me. And it is my show tonight. I now believe that all mountains are secretly pyramids.
It's a bold plan, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for them.
Yep. And the government's been hiding from us all this time. I know my summer home on Mount Shasta, totally a pyramid.
Mount Shasta. There's only one other mountain that annoys me more than Mount Shasta, and that's Mount motherfucking Hayes up in Alaska. That mountain annoys the shit out of me. Yeah, these Chinese mummies that had red hair. Like every picture you've seen of Genghis Khan, what does he look like? He looks like a Mongol, right? But if you go to the actual places in Mongolia where they painted pictures of him on the walls, red hair, blue eyes. Whoops. What the fuck's that all about?
I saw one of my favorite shows.
You get that message, right, nerds?
Was called Secrets of the Dead. Okay. And they did a lot of things talking about, they would do DNA tests and things like this, where they'd say, what about these Amazons, which are over by the Scythians? And they would have discussions like that.
Chinese.
Well, see, that's a big factor. That's that's something that you'll see a lot of, because like Bear's talking about. No, we want to show that we have continuous occupation, so it gives us the right to be there. Not that populations didn't move over the last 20,000 years.
All right. Get your brain around this. Almost every culture in the world persecutes redheads. right? Like that's an ancient thing, persecuting redheads. The British, I mean, used to throw them in lakes as witches, for
Are
fuck's
you
sake.
feeling persecuted, man?
No, I don't give a fuck. But at the end of the day, when we start finding these weird redheaded mummies all over the world, and we start hearing the stories about the redheaded giants living in caves and shit like that, and it all syncs up around that time, it leads to a postulated theory that there may have been a slightly more advanced civilization at the time, not space age, but they were just better at architecture, better at engineering, better at a lot of things, who had their home destroyed through a series of, you know, tectonic whatever cataclysms, and spread out around the world, building their little footprints that they did, and eventually the ugly savages rose up against them, killed them, and carried that fear of them ever since. Maybe.
I'm going to bring up the other part too, which is if you've ever seen an orangutan, and you look at
Yeah.
and the Gigantopithecus, you know, the Gigantopithecus
Yeah.
was what, 9 or 10 feet tall.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they're all like, oh no, they were purely vegetarian. I'm like, you know, what happens if they weren't? And you know, I mean, well, and that also gets the whole thing with your Bigfoot and your Yeti and things like that.
Yautja,
You know,
and all the rest of them.
Yeah.
The orangutan is they've studied them to say how fucking smart they were, but the point is down in Indonesia or something, they refer to them as the redheaded men of the jungle. They don't refer to them as animals. They refer to them as like another smart creature that lives in the jungle. So a lot of the tribes out there would leave offerings to them because they didn't want to have the orangutan raid their camps and steal their stuff, right? So there's weird shit that goes on, and we love to sit here with the intelligentsia in the year 2025 and go, human knowledge has never exceeded what it is today. And like, well, maybe it did. And maybe your head's up your own ass because we can't go back to the moon because somehow all that knowledge got lost. Like there's so much weird. Go ahead, Omen.
I'm going to bring up the other part too, which is it's awfully hard sometimes to take people seriously that can't change their own tire or their own oil. I mean, I'm not saying that's everyone, but I've seen that when I was going to college.
Yeah.
And it was like they could do all the math and stuff, but man, when it was like actually putting something together on the ground, they were completely lost. And we're talking about, you know, engineering, you know, professors and things.
Yeah, Adam, it's amazing how any new idea is actually unpopular. It's like they got to stick to the dogma, and that's it. You know, it does explain. You know, I mean, the explanation is pretty simple. It makes their job easier. They just have to memorize as opposed to think for themselves and do any more research whatsoever ever again in the entire history.
I'm not going to say that. Here's what I found. Again, I'm talking to my friend that's an archaeologist who's not in academia. He said the problem is that the expert got his PhD there, and if his PhD is proven wrong, then is he really a doctorate? You know, that's part of it. And then the other part is every student that they have below them has to subscribe to their belief, otherwise they get kicked out of the PhD program. Yeah. And that's been well known. I mean, my mother was talking about stuff like that in the 70s.
Yeah.
But you know, and so they build these fiefdoms up, and if you question it, oh my God, they will never talk to you. So even if you said, you know what, you did great work here, but we think that you're wrong in this area, they will shut off. And I even heard this she was a professor, but she'd gone all the way up. And she said, I used to think professors were these enlightened men that were putting off their personal feelings to explore for the truth. She said, oh my God, these are worse than kindergartners, you know, fighting.
So like the opening to the movie Stargate, when he's doing his presentation about the symbols and all that stuff and the translations, and everyone's mocking him in the audience and they're scoffing him because we know that book has been debunked. You can't use that translation. That happens on the daily in academia.
Yeah.
That is a constant thing.
Does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, we've lost so much knowledge.
It is a huge ego thing, and this is part of the reason that, and I don't know if, so in 2019, the Society of American Archaeologists went after Graham Hancock personally.
Yes, they did.
I mean, I have never read such a biased piece of crap in my life, and I lost all respect for the SAA. and you could see even when the argument when Flint Dibble was arguing with Graham Hancock on Joe Rogan, you don't have to lie. All you have to do is say, you know what, that's really interesting. We don't have enough proof for that. That's all you have to do. But when you lie, then who do you think I'm going to believe?
Yeah.
You know, the nice elderly gentleman or the piece of crap who is intentionally throwing in misrepresentation and lies?
Well,
it's like you have done more to hurt your profession than anyone.
Well, that's the thing,
because of
right?
that.
Like if you cut out a man's tongue, you don't prove him wrong. You just prove that he's afraid of what he'll say.
Yeah.
So this is the academic version of cutting out someone's tongue, discrediting them, making them into woo-woo and all that. The problem doesn't help when the woo-woo brigade shows up and uses these people's rational observations or theories to spun their idea of, you know, the healing waters or the crystalline teleportation Akashic record and blah, 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 blah. Shut the fuck up, you fucking woo-woo.
That made no sense whatsoever. I'm totally fluent woo-woo.
The damage that the fucking theosophy did to Western civilization will only be recounted in 100 years when someone goes back and looks at it. You know,
well,
like this shit damaged us.
The big old cherry on top of that shit Sunday is the TV show Ancient Aliens. As much as I love it, I have to admit, I love that show just because it's just so preposterous, but also so fantastical that it just gets those wheels a turning. You know, oh, what if? Oh, how can I use this in a game? You know, but it's absolute utter horse shit.
I'm going to bring this up about wormholes. It's a valid hypothesis.
The Einstein-Rosen bridge?
The whatever they're saying.
No, I'm saying that's the thing. Wormholes, the Einstein-Rosen bridge. Fucking Einstein and Rosen both said theoretically this is fucking possible, right? With their math and their knowledge of what they knew back then, they're saying, hey, this is fucking possible. And modern scientists are going, no.
Well, I don't know if it's possible or not, but that's why I don't say a theory. That's why I say a hypothesis.
Exactly.
You have to prove it one way or the other.
Let's rephrase. Their math said it was possible.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, but how? That's all that matters.
Gravity.
And they never gave us that.
They did. Gravity. Gravity is the most amazing magnetics. That's what there's a guy out there who he's a scientist and he got debunked all the way to fucking hell. But I remember seeing this stuff in the 90s and the early 2000s where he was showing how gravity is a push, not a pull. He was showing that gravity is something that's exerted upon us and pushes us down like a magnetic field, as opposed to the pull of the centrifugal force. And he did a lot of models to prove his stuff.
Back in the game.
He got completely fucking devastated by the science of it all. But now we're starting to see them talk about artificial gravity needing strong control of magnetics to do artificial gravity all of a sudden.
It's all aliens. Atlantis, aliens. Pyramids, aliens. Bigfoot, he's an alien. Eating a half-pound burger but gaining a pound, aliens. I did that. I had a half pound of spaghetti and I swear to God I gained 3 pounds. So what? I'm an alien, or I just know how to cook like an alien.
So I'm
maybe the hamburger was an alien.
Which, and again, I don't know exactly how true it is, but I said it doesn't hurt. It just caused me to do more stuff. Was, I was planting trees and I forgot I was using the Ellen G. White method. And I said either it works or it doesn't. But you know what? I'm going to find out if it works because I'm going to do it. People swear by it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I think that's the problem that we have is the lack of intellectual curiosity because they want to just shut it down. Again,
it reminds me of the discussion we were having the other day. I can sum it up in one word. Well, 2 words, 3 words. Well, anyways, they want idiocracy to be real.
Yes.
They want us all to be retarded and rule us that much easier from their underground bunkers in the Cheyenne Mountains or wherever, Antarctica. I don't know. They just want us retarded. They want us as dumb as possible. And gosh, they're getting their way on a day-by-day basis.
Wait a minute. Here's what I have. No one argues that the Henry Kissinger was a brilliant man. No one's arguing, for the most part, that he was corrupt or lacks morals. The problem is that the people that have succeeded him are as dumb as rocks and lack morals and are corrupt. So they're like the worst of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's my problem. Is I don't care if the general population is idiotic. The problem that I have is that we have the guys that think that Brondo is necessary for watering plants.
Mhm.
That's in charge of agriculture. That's that's my issue. But no, it's the. But no, a lot of it is. I'm telling you because I've seen it when I was going through college. It is ego, and they fight tremendously. And it's not like, hey, you can be proven one way or the other. It is savaging reputations. It is making sure that their students do not get PhDs. Their students are run out of academia. Um, Even things that to me should not be controversial. It is like I said, my friend because he has to do archaeology in Texas.
You and I
He
and
has-
Bear and everybody else probably in the audience has said this at one time or another.
Yeah.
They're no longer teaching us how to think, but what to think, and that's
Well,
your job.
I'm going to be this way. That was how do I want to put this? The problem is that people are learning rote with no feedback. The idea of common sense.
Mhm.
We all say this. Well, I'm sorry. If you look at like my grandfather graduated from 8th grade education, and he did fine. He did actually very well for himself. But some of that is that he had practical knowledge. And the problem that we're having is that people are substituting practical knowledge for theoretical knowledge. And they're taking theoretical knowledge as they're not doing it critically, is what it's coming down to, because they just want, like, here, it's rote, just do it. And I remember seeing this and I think some of it is culture, because I saw this among my friends, not my friends necessarily, but like my mother, whenever I'd ask a question, would try finding an answer. And she said, hey, this is what I could find. And she would answer me. But how many times do you remember your friends, whenever they would ask their parents a question, the parents would say, shut up, just because I said so, or just do that.
I say it all the
And
time. I love that expression.
Well, no,
but
I
I'm,
mean,
being
well, I mean, I know, because your son does that to you too, old man, But I think that there's this disconnect of the older generation doesn't know anything. It's like, okay, they may not understand all the computers and stuff, but there's still knowledge. Like we were talking about canning and doing all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then do you remember during 2020 how many people freaked out because they didn't know how to cook? How can you be a functional adult and not know how to cook? Especially in the age of YouTube. It's not that hard to turn on YouTube and watch how someone cooks. And look at the group who it is. It's a lot of people who live in cities.
No, yes, almost exclusively. The further away from the cities you get, the better things get, it seems.
Okay, I got to say two things, Domino. One, Brondo's got what plants need. It's got electrolytes. Secondly, yeah, you're right. But watching the videos doesn't help either. I have some videos that show up on my feed all the time of these people who cook. They bake.
Yeah.
They never grease their pans, which is weird. They never cook stuff long enough for it to actually become cake or cookie. It's always a doughy, gooey mess when they're done. And this is what people are watching to learn how to fucking cook.
Really? Because I no, maybe it's just the cooking channels I go for.
Yeah.
Because I watch.
You got to popular versus good. That's the problem.
Remember when they tried to tell you that cooking at home was bad for the environment? I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. No, that was yeah. Just some of the things you come out like.
Was that recently?
You can say that. Oh, this was probably within the last 20 years.
Really, I don't remember that at all.
Oh no, they banned all the fire. So in Montreal, you can't have a fireplace anymore. You can't burn wood anymore in the city limits. Not allowed. So much so that bagel places and wood-fired oven pizza places had to do special appeals to be allowed to continue doing business.
I heard they did that in New York
your
too.
country is made out of firewood.
That's what I say.
Well, here's the thing that bothers me about that is what happens when the power goes out, because didn't they have that? Was it in Montreal? There's somewhere where it went out for 3 weeks.
The ice storm. The ice storm was insane. But you know what? I got to say, the ice storm also showed me the best in humanity. So nothing you can do about it.
Well, you know what?
Which was
as
what?
much as people.
There were 2 radio stations, one French and one English, that actually had power and able to transmit. So they broadcast 24/7 live. They didn't, they suspended their normal programming, and people would be calling in with, "Hey, there's a restaurant that has power on this street. They're staying open till 4 in the morning if you need food. Hey, there's a pharmacy in this neighborhood. They're on the hospital grid.
Awesome.
They've got power. So if you need your medications, go there. They're taking prescriptions." So the community really came together. But that was after the first week. In the first week, there was fighting in grocery stores over cans of beans.
Having grown up around hurricanes, I will say as much as and even here when we had the big ice storm, my neighbors were willing to help just about everybody. What I was more angry about was the failure of the government to do its basic job. Like, why aren't you telling people to go here for food? Why aren't you telling people here to go for, why aren't you telling people what's going on? It was, and normally Texas has been pretty good for hurricanes, but for whatever reason during, that, which is why I just kept calling him my representative every morning. I don't have power. What are you going to do about this? I said, because the energy companies were not coming forth. Right. Again, I don't mind if you're saying, "Hey, we're working on this. This is what's going on," but there was no information coming out, and I get mad at our emergency manager for that. But I, from personal experience, in most cases, is the people who are looting tend to not even to be from that area.
Yep.
They tend to be they come in, and then the natives who are here, they tend to protect their neighbors' homes. And it was also my intention during a hurricane to go out and meet all my neighbors that I hadn't met before. So I saw a lot of good things whenever there was a natural disaster where I was.
But we're off the topic. So let's discuss the mud flood.
Okay. Hey, man.
Oh, you know what?
Area.
You know what? That's it's funny you mentioned that, because I wanted to get to this. One of the interesting things about the supposedly sinking of Atlantis, was the generations long mud that filled the Atlantic Ocean, preventing travel through the Atlantic Ocean. I got to know, Omen, Bear, maybe you guys could clue me in. Is there a kind of dirt that just floats forever?
No, but what it was is, okay, so this is where the
bentonite.
there's that. But the Richat structure is the part of what proves this whole thing, right? Is that if there had been a cresting and then dragging it out, it's not that it flooded the entire Atlantic Ocean. You have to understand what their perception of what the entire ocean was, which was about 100 miles outside the Pillars of Hercules. So that's the Pyrenees, that whole area, right? Okay. That's very high raised underwater. That's like the seabed there is much higher than the middle of the Atlantic, for example, where you have the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So if you had a tons of topsoil get wiped out by a massive flood that came up like a tsunami and pulled it back out, it could theoretically collect in those areas and make the water thicker for a long time and prevent.
I'm going to bring up,
like, how long though? I mean,
I'm going to bring up what Bear has said. Well, I'm going to say what Bear has said and add a little bit more. Remember, we're talking about the columns of Hercules, the pillars of Hercules, whatever you want to call it. Is if there's a bunch of sediment that gets there, as you get the tides going back and forth, it's going to cause that sediment to wash back and forth as it goes through there.
It look like a sandbar, like a temporary mud bar.
Yeah. Now, do I know if it's going to always do that? I don't think so. And when we talk about bentonite, if you actually look at that's a bentonite slurry. You shouldn't. That would be pretty rare. That would be from a giant volcano. Which again, if that did happen, maybe that is part of the explanation. That'd be something like you'd have from.
Well, think about this, right? So look at the Richat structure in the Western Sahara, right? The land slopes up to it, right? We know the water levels are 400 feet, or 400 feet or 400 meters, whatever it is, lower than they were before. If you had an off-sea volcano explode and cause a massive tsunami to flood up onto that plain between the mountains of Atlas and then pull all of that topsoil back into the ocean, we're talking thousands of square miles. It's not impossible. It's absolutely, depending on the size of the underwater volcano, it's not impossible at all to say that much happened. And we are in a very volcanically active area there.
Well, the Azores, I think, are absolutely volcanically active. The other point that you look at is if you ever look at the Amazon and how much mud comes out of there, and you can literally see like the difference in color, you know. So again, and they could have, like if you actually read his stuff, they said this was not once. This happened many times.
Yeah.
Where civilizations rose and fell.
Yeah, it's something like 8 or 9 separate mass floodings of the entire world, or at least the world according to that Plato was familiar with. There's all kinds of reasons why that could happen, so why not?
Well, the other part is, again, I don't know. I don't think they've studied it as much as they should have. We all talk about the Younger Dryas. It looks like there were 2 major floods, Meltwater Pulse A and B.
Yeah.
And there could have been a couple of other ones in out there. But it looks like there were some instances like 30,000 years ago where there were giant floods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about the same time that you look at Australia losing a lot of its megafauna.
Yep.
Now, they can blame human beings, but it seems like human beings were out there for like 20,000 years coexisting. And then I think this is the ones that you
I had
about.
a saber-tooth tiger and everything back then.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying about but we're talking about Australia. But those plasmatoids on Ayers Rock or Eluhu, or whatever the current name is.
Ayers Rock, Uluru.
Yeah.
Uluru,
anyway,
Uluru.
But when you look at that comes from a lot of those. They date 30,000 years ago. So it may have been that we've gotten several different cataclysms.
Well, where I live in Quebec, you just go to the South Shore here 5 miles, and you'll see these like Mont Saint-Hilaire, Mont Saint-Bruno. There's these mountains that have no foothills, right? They're just rocks sticking up out of the ground, and these were left behind by the retreating glaciers, is what they say, right? They left just these big rocks all over the place. I mean, when we say big rocks, we're talking like bigger than Ayers Rock. You know what I mean? Like they're pretty fucking big.
Because of pyramids.
Okay.
You know what?
You just softball it in. I mean, come on.
I actually, well, yeah, okay. Well, no, I just watched more Bear's reaction than anything else. So it's like, what did Shadow say? And I looked at Bear's reaction, like, all right, that's a pattern.
It is a pattern. But that's the other thing. We also have to take that into consideration. That's so good that you use the word pattern. We are pattern-seeking monkeys. Yes. Humans are very much pattern-seeking monkeys, so we can invent patterns as well by just looking at things and going, "Well, I see a pattern." So we have to be careful about some of this stuff too. Obviously, look, nothing I'm saying is absolute fact. I would never pretend it's absolute fact. I'm just saying it's stuff that I've heard or stuff that I think is interesting. What the truth is, I don't know.
My whole view is it's compelling. It's compelling. That's what I like to say. Is it's compelling.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
If it's compelling, then to me, let's do more research to go one way or the other.
I agree.
That's what I think that bugs me the most. Not that people say it's it is or it isn't, but it's just the absolute. I don't want, and I know a lot of it has to do with funding, because archaeology gets very little funding, and my God, whatever they have to do is they fight. Because I think here, and again, one of my friends, I know like 4 archaeologists. Actually, no, 5, but she was saying that she was talking about, why don't we go look at these sites that we've already found and da-da-da-da-da, and they go, nope,
nope, we're not doing that.
Yeah,
why don't we take a look at the Great Snake Mound a little bit closer? Nope, it's a protected national park now. You can't touch it. Hey, there might be hollow spots inside the Devil's Tower. Nope, you're not allowed to go look.
Can we take one of those ground penetrating radars and just do a perimeter of the Sphinx? Oh, no, what? Why not?
Nope, not allowed, because the Egyptology will not let you. Zahiwas outland forbidden that stuff. Dude, there are pictures of under the Sphinx, the tunnels under the Sphinx that they now admit exist. There are pictures in them when they went in. There's like they fucked up on some of their camera angles, and they caught other side tunnels that have wooden barriers put up over them.
Oh, and the Japanese. Oh, wait a minute. Here's the funny thing. They don't let the Americans, but they let the Japanese do that. Mm-hmm. So the Japanese are showing stuff, but for whatever reason, whenever the Americans try doing it, they won't do it for the Americans. Mm-hmm. And you know what gets me about the whole thing is the more mystery or the more fascinating things there are there, like the necropolis and a few other stuff, the more I actually want to go visit. I'm like, you will help out your tourism. You will not be hurting it if. But it's I will say this much, having dealt with Arabs when I was in Iraq, they were very prideful, and I mean they got physically angry if you tried to question them at all. And I've seen Hawass do that a few times, where he just flips out.
Start calling you Raven. You got that, Shadow? I'm going to start calling you Raven.
Please don't.
Well, then stop with you. They're all pyramids nonsense.
Come on.
Look,
it was funny. I just came up with that today.
No, it is funny. I'm just busting your chops.
Now, I'm going to use that. Because I was thinking, imagine you got this world, it's perfectly round, and and then the aliens come and they start building, all the mountains as pyramids, knowing that, a million years from now, the dust and everything will start collecting on them, and then you'll have...
Hey, I still like the Silurian hypothesis, and there's no way we could prove or disprove it.
Cannot.
What are you bringing Doctor Who into this for?
Well, no, because it's like, well, even if there was something that was 65 million years ago, it would all be destroyed by now.
Well,
we wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Right?
Yeah. Well, I will say this much, which I find so funny, is when people say, not getting too much into climate change, but they get mad like, this took millions of years to do this. Have you seen Canada and all of the wood? And that's only been the last 10,000 years. I mean, that's what amazes me. Earthworms have moved, earthworms have barely moved north, and yet we have these lush forests all up in Canada. So it's
those tree stump mountains, though, those are interesting. Like, that is an interesting thing. The ones that they talk about, it's not all mountains, but these weird plateau mountains that are circular and stuff. Like, that's a weird fucking thing.
Hey, mini Warbot.
And petrified wood does become like rock. So,
yeah, I did. That was one of the things that when we went out to. Those of you who live in Washington, or if you're able to go out towards Soap Lake and things and the Grand Coulees, go do your research out there and go look at like some of the what they call erratics, which are these, they're larger than a house size blocks that floated down, settled, and then melted in place. And these rocks are like 20 feet high. They're just amazing. They're just on the side of the road. You just drive by like, oh, okay.
It's a crazy old world full of crazy stuff, and there's a class of academia that is invested in making sure we never know the truth, and anyone that tries to get the truth is basically Galileo'd or Copernicus or whatever the case may be. They're censored.
Well, and here's what I get mad at is, when I was trying to learn geology, we never learned about the Missoula floods or anything like that. And my friend who lived in Missoula, who went to grad school for his PhD in Missoula, did not know about the Missoula floods. How that to me should be something they all like talk about, but no, that's and they've known about it for 70 years. That's what gets me. They've all agreed that this happened 70 years ago. Now they may disagree on the timeline and stuff, but like, how could you ignore that stuff?
That's why I like rabbinical academia. Rabbinical academia is one of my favorite things going. They basically agree on what the word is, but not the meaning, right? So they all sit around and they say, the word, it says week. All right, we all agree it says week. Great. What was a week? Well, we're going to debate now. And that's where the debate comes in, the meaning of the word, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas everybody outside of that, out of rabbinical study, so a lot of our modern scientific study and thought process of academia grows out of the old Christian colleges, has the Christian sort of papacy mentality of, no, it means this is the absolute meaning, we have spoken, it is not up for debate. And it's like, well, no, it needs to be up for debate. It needs to be, you need to be able to prove your shit, and that's the most important part of all this, is proof. Proof is hard to come by. And if there's enough questions raised, you can't say you're wrong. You have to say, well, we don't know. We should study it more.
And Mini Warmut, I tried that and I got in trouble.
Yeah.
You tried playing the X-Files music?
Yeah.
Got a copyright strike, did you?
No, it was a while ago. But I tried, yeah.
Well, if I ever come back on this, I will go ahead and grab myself a kazoo. And I'll do the introduction for you on a kazoo. We'll do the X-Files. But it'll be and people will hate your show. My gift.
Okay, you know what? I'll take up that challenge
To
I
because we are going to do
again,
this again next week. Speaking of which, doing shows. You and I are doing a show tomorrow at 5 p.m.
yes, we are.
talking about Valorous. I got my new copy in. It's gorgeous. It's perfect.
Glad to hear it.
So,
Thank you.
and I'm not gonna lie, I've hardly read but like 3 pages of it because I've been so busy
No worries.
hanging out with you.
It's not a page. It's not a page turner, dude. It's not like ooh,
But it's only right that I do my due diligence and have a somewhat working knowledge of the game, at least as a player, so I don't have to read the monster section and things like that just yet. But it's only fair that I don't just go, well, do it all for me. Tell me, that's
By the
that's
way,
all.
what Nersner just said, I 100% agree with.
I something is weird. Hold on, something is weird here. I have a question. I have questions. Is awesome. Therefore, I'm going to make up some answers as weak sauce of the highest degree. Absolutely.
that's-
oh,
And that's where the woo woo comes into it. And I don't care for the woo woo.
that's what gets me so angry is a hypothesis then becomes dogma, and then they stick with it whether there's proof for it or not. And that's what I've seen too much in academia. It's like a perfect example is the overkill hypothesis in the Americas, and it's just, my God, people want to believe that so badly. And
Well, because there's less and less to believe in, with our institutions being, corrupt at every turn, in other things. I don't blame them, but when verifiable evidence is brought forth that disproves one woo or the other, you say, okay, I got fooled or I got tricked, and you move on. There's plenty of other woos out there to woo. So why dig your heels in the sand and go, no, it's aliens or it's this or it's that? No, it's probably not, because as we all know, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And last time I checked, I haven't seen any aliens on the 5 o'clock news doing interviews.
Yes, you have. They're called politicians. I mean,
no, those are
they are
lizard
not
people.
human beings.
Lizard people. It's the lizard people. There is a book I would recommend everyone take a read of. It's called Gods of Eden. It's by a guy. Hang on, let me grab it. Give me a second.
I think I think I know exactly the book. Not Frisbee, but
William Bramley, Gods of Eden.
Yes. He looks like Frisbee.
I bought this book when I was originally in 1995 moving to Vancouver. I was in a secondhand bookstore, and I wanted something to read on the plane. I was going through the 25-cent bin, and I saw this UFO in the garden. I'm like, what the fuck is this? The chilling truth about extraterrestrial infiltration and the conspiracy to keep mankind in chains. What? And then I read the back. Human history is seeming blah, 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 blah. And then I got to this line. From the wars of the ancient pharaohs to the assassination of JFK. And I'm like, what? All right, this is some this is some fucking weapons grade woo woo.
I knew you were going to say the weapons grade part. Thank you.
And then I read it, and I was like, whoa, okay, wait, whoa. The one thing I really like about this guy is he does extensive footnoting, and then at the end he gets to a chapter and he goes, I don't want to know anymore. I don't want to research this anymore. Here's a bunch of topics I was going to do that I didn't. If you want to keep doing, go right ahead. I encourage you to go do your own research, but I'm done. I have seen him on literally one show get interviewed in the last 25 years.
Oh, man.
He's not one of these guys that's out there promoting his book or any of that shit. And it's really interesting read.
He was actually on Ancient Aliens numerous times, I think.
It's one interview that they cut up into multiple
that's
chunks.
the way the whole show has always been.
Yeah.
They did like 10 interviews back in 2000, 1999 or whatever, and they just chopped them up and are still using them. You can still the one guy, he passed away, and they're still showing bits of that interview, releasing little bits of that interview. The French guy, I can't remember his name. I really thought he was kind of interesting, but then I found out he passed away, and I'm like,
but anyway, it's a very good read. Very good.
Well, see, that's
I
the
just
thing
wrote it
that
down on
really.
my list of things. Not
Yeah,
the
you can get
list
it on.
of.
You can get it on Amazon, like for like $5,
Yeah.
$10. You know.
Actually, I just looked it up. It looks like you can download the full PDF.
Well, even
Yeah,
better.
but then I won't
Okay.
read it.
From an academic. Well, that's true. Well, you know what? You laugh at that, but I do the same thing whenever I'm doing exercise programs. If I pay for it, I'll do it. But even though everything is free for me on doing it, it's the fact I paid for it. By God, I'm gonna get my money's worth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if I've got the hardcover or the hard copy, if you will, I will read it. It's just a matter of time. I'm about to put in a set of bookshelves in the restroom downstairs, so I'll eventually get to it.
There you go.
I'm just thinking, where did you keep these and read these? Maybe I don't want you to loan them out to me.
No, I don't put my RPGs in there. Jesus Christ. No,
Well,
stuff that no one
it's funny.
else will read, ever.
Well, speaking of the Smithsonian, what bothers me is when they admit that they received something and say, "Well, we can't find it." What?
Oh, because it's being watched by top men.
Top
Yeah.
men.
Yeah. Well, you know
All
what?
right.
Have you guys ever seen the Smurf-tastrophe by?
No.
Well, so it was adult.
Here's how
it
you
was,
know Omen's a father.
Well, no, it was but it was the Smurf-tastrophe where they're making fun of Katrina on about chicken.
Oh.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden one of the Smurfs comes over and is like banging on Papa Smurf's door and says, Papa Smurf, the dam's going to break. He says, and who are you? He says, I'm Army Corps of Engineers, Smurf. He says, that dam was built by the finest contractors in the forest. And then they flash over to the guys to the contractors, and you see them fucking each other and like completely drunk. It's like, all right. And then of course the dam breaks, and but it's the very beginning part of it where he says those were built by the finest contractors in the forest. It's the same thing. Top people.
Top men.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
The lowest bidder.
Yeah.
Lowest bidder, technically acceptable. And what does acceptable mean? Can you sit here and smoke? Yeah. Well, actually, the sad thing was, oh my God. Speaking of which, I had a friend of mine who was an MP, and he was guarding nuclear weapons, and they used to turn off. And this was actually in an IG report. They used to turn off the alarms so they could get naps in the towers. And this was during the Cold War, and I'm like, oh my God. Because I remember, there was no time. Said, oh yeah, it's not like they're guarding nuclear weapons. He just looked at me like, oh yeah, sorry for bringing that one. So yeah.
My favorite Atlantis is Disney. I love that movie.
Oh. I still think my favorite Atlantis is from the, Warlord. That's where I just remember seeing the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
The comic Warlord?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Travis Morgan?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
I have all of them. I used to have them as a collection of actual comics. Now I just have them as digital files because I got rid of my comics years ago.
I have them as digital files thanks to Omen. I have them as individual comic books in my collection, but the omnibus is coming out any minute now, and then I will actually.
Have you seen the price on DC omnibuses lately? Funk that very much.
$125 or something like that. It's insane.
They're crazy the prices they're charging for omnibuses.
They're about $100.
Yeah,
I just
convert that to me in Canada, 150, 200. I wanted to get the Crisis ones, and I saw the price. I'm like, what? I wanted to get the DC Who's, and I was like, nope. I'm not spending money on that. Fuck that.
I look at it as an investment for.
You have to put a bunch of comics into the thing and just sneak them into Bear. Oh no, these are eating. Don't worry about these.
Yeah, do an emergency smuggle of trade paperbacks across the border. Exactly.
I look at them like we used to look at encyclopedias. They're going to last for a good long time, and they're going to be full of valuable entertainment for a good long time. And My great grandkids.
Oh, let me tell you, those early warlords were pretty rough to read. Like before he gets his cool barbarian with feathered helmet stuff, the earlier stuff was like, wow, this is hard
The
to
first
read.
10.
Yeah.
Well,
But all three of us here were apparently really big fans of it, and I don't mind.
I think I started in like 60. I went back and reread them. Um, and I and actually in the 1990s they came out with kind of the graphic novel.
Yeah, there was a
first
second run,
Yeah.
very short, but I've never read that. I'm looking forward to that as well. Uh,
And it doesn't matter. That's one of the things that just inspired me about when we talk about Atlantis. That's what we all want Atlantis to be. And after reading
Atlantis
Plato, we're
is
like,
off the coast of India. They found it. No, that's Dwarka.
no. Actually, he's right. That's what they were joking about. It was Atlanta when it sunk into the sea
Oh,
and
okay,
became
okay.
Atlantis in Futurama.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
gentlemen,
that's
I
a
must
great
take
point.
my leave of you. It's getting late, and I got to work in the morning. So
All
I'm
right.
Yeah,
gonna say,
we were going to end the show in 9 minutes, but okay.
oh, then I'll wait. I'll wait 9 minutes. Then.
Yeah. I didn't think it was going to go this long. I was telling Owen, maybe an hour, and then
Yeah.
we did an hour and a half, and then you showed up, and I'm like, oh,
And then
crap.
I threw the spanner in the works. That's
No.
did.
It's always great to have you on the show, nerds. I wish you would have joined. Maybe next week.
Well, and you filled in all those areas, which I kind of remembered, but don't remember the exact things. So that always helps.
That's
Yeah. Thanks a lot for showing up. Next
Nerds
week,
doesn't do the woo woo.
next week we're actually going to do this, but we're going to go entirely on the fictional side and talk about what Atlantis could be fictionally, or however you want to look at it. But the fun side. Stargate, Travis
Mars.
Morgan.
Can it be Mars?
It can be Mars,
Oh.
yeah. I mean, any anything, because when we think of Atlantis, we think of this, this mythical, magical place of ancient possibilities and maybe danger and intrigue and all those things that it's like one catch all word that can inspire a creator, regardless of what whether it's role playing games or books or novels or TV shows or whatever, that just opens up the floodgates of all kinds of fun ideas that we can, since we're all role players and we're all GMs here, that I want to go into. I think we knocked out, all the real earthy world stuff about Atlantis. We all have our different opinions on what it might have been. We're never going to be able to prove it unless we get a time machine. And last time I checked, those are pretty expensive. Even I don't have that kind of money.
Well, DeLoreans are expensive. Let's just face it,
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I got the plutonium, but I just can't get the DeLorean. You know how hard those are to find these days?
I thought it was interesting because like Raymond Carlson did some of it, but they were trying to debunk Atlantis. It was interesting on some stuff they just ignored. It's like, wait a minute, you're getting sediments that are from a certain time period, but you're saying that they're 2,000 feet under the water. That doesn't seem right. But no, that was, well,
That's a good point.
I've enjoyed listening to it. Yeah.
I don't know, Cinder. And George has a great point here. Great thing about Atlantis is that it is not owned as an IP, not yet. Give me time. I'm working on it.
Well, you know what? Now that Disney lost Steamboat Willie and Popeye and Winnie the Pooh.
Crazy. Yeah, a bunch of crazy kids.
So now China can't leverage Disney to sue us if we make fun of China.
Oh, well.
That's good to know.
Well, it's even better since everyone's tired of political correctness. You're allowed to once again put on yellow or blackface.
Well, Pale Cinder, that's one of the great things about our little community is there's always someone running something, and it's usually a dungeon master running games for a table of dungeon masters. So you'll probably feel right at home at one of these games one of these days. If you're really looking to get into a game, just take a little more vetting. I'm sure you understand, because we've made the mistake of letting just anybody come on to this particular show.
Penis.
Well, yes, you did not properly vet, even though you were warned.
No, and
Don't.
I will never stop paying for that one mistake. But it's funny as hell, and it's not one of those
Yes.
stories I could eat for free on, but it's still good for
You're making a good effort on it, though.
you know.
You bring it up more than we do. I'm just saying.
Well, because I got to explain a couple of things, to the new folks, because we have been getting some new viewers here, so every once in a while I got to explain the way things are.
If you've been part of the community for like 3 to 6 months, that's very different than just showing up. It's like, hey,
Well,
that's right.
and Nerds was there, and so was Omen. Yeah.
Well, I know I was there because we were telling you, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, sure. You're like, well, there's some that's naive and innocent.
Yeah, well, I've grown up a lot since then.
So, no, it was.
One of these days they're going to let me drive.
Oh, yeah.
The internet
Wait,
is
wait,
the very
wait.
definition of a low trust society.
That's true. That said, I met some great people, so you know what? I'll take the psychopaths.
Yeah, we have.
With the good people.
You take the good with the bad. You have to.
Yeah.
Well, the bad is really microscopic, almost non-existent. At least in my experience, I can't even name 5 people that rub me the wrong way or tried to rub off on me the wrong way.
No, you're clearly not trying hard enough.
Or in Shadow's case, try to rub one out while he brings them on.
Aye. Penis.
Zero trust is the gold standard for a reason. Yeah, but as jaded as I am, I still have a tiny little sliver of hope for whatever reason.
It's back to trust but verify. And the other part is, I trust you, but not enough to make myself vulnerable.
It was
things.
bad, and it was humorous, and it was memorable. Adam, by the way, Adam is a new friend of mine. Thanks to Bloodworth, we are now in Bloodworth's Castles and Crusade game on Tuesday. You'll dig the old farts at the table, Adam. Bunch of good guys and gals.
So, what is your opinion of Castles and Crusades?
It's overrated. It does nothing better except complicate things and water some things down. But, like I've always said since the beginning, a shitty game with great people is still a lot of fun. And it's not a shitty game, but some things are too complicated. Some things need to be, a little more complicated. And for the most part, I think the character classes are kind of weak. They lost a lot of the things they used to have. But that's me. I'm always wanting more.
Well, now I'm scared to have you read Valorous.
Why?
Which reminds me,
I already know, Bear, that it's very, if not completely different than everything else that's out there. So I can't judge it by the usual criteria that I judge most. Come on, dog. Fantasy role playing games, completely different.
Different. If I sell 47 more copies on Amazon, I'll break even. Hey, wouldn't that be
that's
an
actually pretty
accomplishment?
good.
Wait. Oh, you mean even from your end and not from Amazon bilking you or anything like that?
No, like the amount of money I put into it.
That's exactly
I'll
what
have recouped that if I sell 47 more copies on Amazon. But I've also kept the price artificially low. Like I set my margin to about $5 profit per sale, as opposed to I could easily have put it $10 more and been making $10, $12 a book on this. But I wanted it to be affordable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
I paid a lot more for
similar
works.
I'll have to. because I don't remember seeing it, but that's probably my fault. I'll have to double check.
Oh, maybe I'll send you my defect copy, Owen. Maybe if you're lucky.
Or
The
you
only
could
thing
just go spend,
No.
or you could just
No,
go
I
spend
backed it.
$20 on Amazon.com. That one. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I
Yeah,
no,
you
I
do that.
backed it for
Do that, you'll
$70.
get a better
That's
copy.
what I was saying. So
No,
why.
that's heroic. You're thinking of
Oh,
heroic. This is
Oh,
Valorous.
I'm sorry.
This is-
Valorous is different.
This is so okay. So heroic, we ran into the one problem of we
Yeah.
got screwed on money, we got screwed on a lot of things, and artists. Oh boy, did we get screwed on artists! And we're now at the point where there's zero dineros left. I'm paying out of pocket to get the art done now and the layout, and then I got to come up with the money to get the print copies done and everything. It's just a money hole, right?
Okay, I'm sorry.
So my goal,
Yeah.
thank you, but it happens. My
Yeah.
goal with Valorous was to produce an evergreen product that I could sell for a reasonable amount of price with the Patreon to then generate between $500 and say $800 a month of capital coming in that I could then use to finish heroic. Sadly, the Patreon keeps doing this. It's like we're so close, but we never get there. And Valorous, it's selling, but not as well as I wanted it to, sadly. But that's because I'm not out there shilling it and pimping it and doing all that. And also, I made the decision in the 12th hour to go, nope, not doing a D&D clone. Fuck it. We're going to do the heroic system for fantasy instead. If I had done it as a D&D clone, I probably would have sold 500 copies by now because people just buy VX clones for some fucking reason. And that drives me insane, by the way. Watching people like me and Doc Flamingo and stuff like that, we put games that are new and interesting and different out, and then we watch some asshole launch their latest version of BX Shadow Blood, and they do 10, 15, 20, 30, $100,000 in backing on it. It's like, come on. Come on. But that's the way the culture is. That's the way the nature of it all is. So do what we can.
Before we leave, Bear, can you post
Sure.
a link to the book because it is incredibly hard to find. Post in the private. I'll post it here.
American? You want the American link?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
And just so you know, George, tomorrow Bear and I are going to talk about his
There you go.
game for an hour or so
Yeah.
before, because I'm doing 2 live shows back to back tomorrow, which is something I've never done before.
250 pages, full game. It's a bare bones edition, meaning that I didn't get verbose when I didn't have to, except on a couple of topics I felt. It's got decent art in it.
It's right there, Adam. It's in the link down below.
And it's roughly 20 of whatever your currency is wherever you are. So in the UK, it's £20. In Europe, it's €20. In Canada, it's $20. In America, it's $20. That type of thing.
Well,
I like it.
Are you? You're probably not on Facebook, right?
Me? I am. Yeah.
Okay. Because they have paid ads that you can put up. That
Not worth it. I know people who've done it. It's not worth it.
Okay.
I know people who've done it, and they've come back, and I've talked to them after, said, how'd it go? And they're like, I lost money on that.
Okay, because with the Arduin guys, they don't have that problem. They're actually doing commercials for my show to promote their show. So it's
nice. But they also have a recognizable brand with Arduin, right?
Well, yeah, but like I said, tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. It'll be great.
We'll do the thing, and then afterwards, George and I believe Bo are going to have another show after that, a painting and prepping show, Civil Unrest Part 2, the Food Apocalypse. I think we're going to call it. But that's what we got for you guys tonight. I'm going to go start reading Bear's book.
Well, you know
Before I
what? No, he's right. For $20, that's a steal.
Look,
Yeah,
it's-
even what's his name? Josh Holland. Total Party Skills books are $10+ more.
Yeah, but I meant just $20 for a book, period. Let alone 200 pages. Let alone an RPG, which takes a lot more time than because you have to make sure the system works. So yeah, it's
basically with character sheet and all that, it's about 250 pages. And if it becomes a big thing and people like it, and I sell a lot of them, and people want more, I'll eventually do a deluxe edition, which will be and we'll go to crowdfunding for that. But this was out of pocket, lots of help, and it's there. And the whole point of this is to generate money. And I'm working on an adventure for it to put up for people to buy so they can actually play the game with an adventure as well. So that hopefully will be nice. You're going to be playtesting it, Shadow, just in case you're wondering, by the way. No, actually, you're not. You're not in the Valor's game. You're in the Heroic game. Never mind. You're not going to be playtesting it, Shadow. The hell with you, sir.
Single tear runs down my cheek.
One single tear. Well, thank you. Anyone who picks up a copy, thank you so much.
I don't know. That means a
You're
lot.
literally giving me money to pay people to do what they do best to make Heroic a great game, which is the superhero version.
I'll have to try getting it after Thanksgiving or so, just because I'm going to be on traveling. Believe it or not, I do like to support people I know that I kind of like.
Well, Omen, actually,
I like being kind of liked. That's nice.
Omen, I got mine each time. I got mine, even the replacement copy, in like 24 hours.
Yeah,
so
yeah, but I'm leaving in probably about 3 days to go for 2 weeks. So that's my whole point. So I'd rather not risk it.
Well, you can when you go on Amazon, they'll tell you when it'll be delivered, and it's pretty damn likely that you'd get it.
I understand that, but I've also had it where it has not, and it's just easier for me to grab it after Thanksgiving.
Listen, do not make this a stressful experience. Please just get it when you can.
I know. Well, this isn't about you, Bear. It's now about Shadow and I, fighting over Amazon delivery.
Thanks for showing up, guys. This was a lot of fun. Way more fun than I thought. Good to have you. I did a crap ton of research and only one single tear. So I will see you guys all tomorrow. Probably hanging out with DM James, and then my show.
Yes, I need to hang out with DM James so I can get my blood pressure up before I come to talk to you.
Whatever it takes, man.
He's in troll mode these days, so it's anyway.
He's a
fun
gentleman.
He is.
And take care, nerds. Adam Zero, everybody else. George, I will see you tomorrow at. I don't know exactly what time because I don't know how long Bear and I we're going to talk and see how long we want to do this, because we're going to do a couple of shows because he's going to help me make a character for his game as well as talk about his game, and that could take easily 2 episodes if we really milk it. So I will see you guys all tomorrow. Bear, Omen, thanks again, and I will see you guys all